Chapter 56. Good good. Wang chuckled and patted Gu Fengzi's hand before ordering Sang-Wan to sit down. She gestured to Gu Fengzi. Quick, come forward and greet Wan Yang. Yes. Gu Fengzi took 2 steps forward and curtsied elegantly towards Sang-Wan. Cousin-in-law. Wang scolded with a smile. What cousin-in-law? You should call her sister instead. Since Fengju isn't here, the 2 of you can get close to each other. Sang-Wan felt bitter in her heart, and even more bitter in her mouth. What did she mean by since Fengju isn't here, the 2 of you can get close to each other? Only her mother-in-law would be able to say such ridiculous words. Gu Fengzi became even more shy after hearing that. She raised her eyes and looked at Sang-Wan. Sister. Sister is too polite. When their eyes met, Sang-Wan could clearly see the ridicule and provocation in Gu Fengzi's eyes. She smiled and took off the jade bracelet on her wrist before putting it on Gu Fengzi's wrist. She chuckled. Sister, you don't have to be so polite. I didn't prepare anything. Sister, please don't dislike this little thing. Why would I dislike sister's things? I'll definitely treat it like a treasure and hide it. Gu Fengzi giggled. Wang was happy to see Sang-Wan being so tactful. She smiled happily and said to Gu Fengzi, You're lucky. In the future, you must properly respect Wan Yang. If I hear that Wan Yang is wronged in any way, I won't let it go. Aunt Wang. Aunt Wang is biased. Gu Fengzi smiled coquettishly. How would I dare to make sister feel wronged? Fengzi still has this bit of self-awareness. When she said the last sentence, her eyes dimmed and her voice became deeper. I know you won't. I'm just giving you advice for nothing. Wang quickly added. Gu Fengzi smiled again. Aunt Wang's teachings are right. Fengzi should learn from them. Isn't that right, cousin-in-law? Oh no, sister. Sang-Wan smiled and nodded gently. After coming out of Wang's place, Sang-Wan subconsciously looked up. The sky was high and blue. The sun shone through the thin clouds and shone on the ground. The wind blew gently. The trees were green and beautiful. Sang-Wan suddenly felt a little absent-minded. She didn't know if it was reality or a dream. Her posture and steps were as graceful and calm as usual. Only she knew that every step she took was uneven, as if she was stepping on a pile of cotton. She raised her head abruptly and saw a young married woman holding a willow branch in front of the pavilion, staring at the koi fish in the pond in boredom. It was second young mistress Sure. Only then did Sang-Wan realize that she had unknowingly turned into the garden. After thinking for a while, she walked towards the evening fragrance pavilion with heavy steps. Sister-in-law. What a coincidence. Second Sure family's young mistress heard the commotion and raised her head. Seeing that it was her, she hurriedly got up to greet her. What are you doing here alone? Sang-Wan smiled and walked in hand with her. What else can I be doing? I'm just daydreaming out of boredom. Second young mistress Sure smiled bitterly, and said with an indescribable sense of loneliness and dejection. Sang-Wan did not expect her to be so direct, and was stunned for a moment. Second young mistress Sure giggled and said, Sister-in-law, you won't blame me for being rude, right? In this manner, only in front of eldest sister-in-law do I dare to speak my true feelings. You're fine, what's wrong? Sang-Wan asked. Fine? What's fine? Second young mistress Sure sneered and said softly, I have secretly sent a letter to my parents. I want to go back to my parents' house for a while. Sang-Wan's breathing stopped and she felt dejected for a moment. Second young mistress Sure's life was not as good as hers, but at least she could go home and have her parents to shelter her from the wind and rain. What about her? She couldn't even go home. Big brother and sister-in-law had it hard enough. She could not add more trouble to them. Second young mistress Sure smiled and said, In the eyes of outsiders, we are so lucky to have entered the Sure household. But who would believe that we are soaking in bitter water? Kiki, we are actually quite pitiful. But no one would believe it. And they would say that we are not satisfied. Second young mistress Sure choked and quickly wiped the corners of her eyes. Actually, my request is very simple. I just want to live a peaceful life with my husband. But this is just wishful thinking. Sister-in-law. Sang-Wan's heart was touched and tears welled up in her eyes. She patted second young mistress Sure's shoulder lightly. Second young mistress Sure leaned on her shoulder and smiled embarrassedly. I lost my composure. Sister-in-law, you won't blame me, right? Sangwon shook her head and said gently, don't think too much. Happiness is a day, sadness is also a day. Why make life difficult for yourself? Don't worry, second young master will definitely come back. Not to mention other things, his parents are still here. Can he not come back for the rest of his life? He is still young and full of vigor, but he is only 1 or 2 years old. Think about it. How can a woman like that be relied on? He will definitely realize his mistake and turn back. Second young mistress Shi's expression relaxed and she took a deep breath and smiled gratefully. Thank you, sister-in-law. I understand what you are saying. Although I am not from a scholarly family like sister-in-law, the daughters of the Zhou household have also been taught the rules since young. Since I have entered the Shi household, I can only endure it. Why should I make life difficult for myself? But second young mistress Shi smiled bitterly. That mother-in-law of mine. Second young mistress Shi did not dare to speak ill of her mother-in-law to her sister-in-law. She smiled bitterly and sighed. She vented her anger on me and blamed me for everything. She would scold me for the slightest thing and find ways to torment me. I really can't take it anymore. Sister-in-law, to be honest, I really envy you. Even though you have Gu Fangzi, Big Brother and Big Aunt treat you extremely well. At least no one would torment you for no reason. Sangwon's face turned pale and she forced a smile and said softly, we both have our own difficulties, so let's not talk about it. Envy her? Hearing this, Sangwon did not know whether to laugh or cry. So there were people who envied her. But if she knew that Gu Fangzi was about to enter the Shi household, and if she knew the real relationship between her and Shi Fengju, perhaps she would not be envious of her. At least, she had more to look forward to. As the two of them were talking, a servant with a flat head and a straight face wearing a bright red vest and a white silk dress rushed over and said anxiously, Second young mistress Shi, second old mistress Shi is asking why you are not back yet. She wants you to go back quickly. Second young mistress Shi glanced coldly at the servant and said lightly, I know. You go back first. The servant hesitated for a moment, but seeing that second young mistress Shi had no intention of leaving, she could only agree and leave. Sangwon saw that second old mistress Shi had sent someone to rush second young mistress Shi, and wanted to leave. However, second young mistress Shi pulled her arm reluctantly and said, Sister-in-law, can you accompany me for a while longer? But, it's all right just for a while. All right. Sangwon could not bear to reject second young mistress Shi's pleading face, and nodded her head. Not long after, second old mistress Shi brought a few servants and rushed over angrily. She shouted, I'd like to see what you're doing. How dare you disobey my orders? Time and time again you still can't come. Which family's rule is this? A daughter-in-law is even more arrogant than a mother-in-law. Second young mistress Shi subconsciously took 2 steps back and hid beside Sangwon. She defended herself. I am talking to sister-in-law. Is there anything you need from me? Seeing that she was avoiding her and even daring to talk back, second old mistress Shi shouted angrily. Rebel, rebel! Why aren't you coming over? Do you think I will eat you if I am a tiger? However, second young mistress Shi refused to go over. She held onto Sangwon's arm tightly and said nervously and fearfully, Mother, I will go back in a while. I will go back in a while. I am not afraid of you. You are also not a tiger. You. Second old mistress Shi's blood rushed to her head. She was so embarrassed that she flew into a rage and rushed forward to grab second young mistress Shi. Second young mistress Shi finally let go of Sangwon and ran away while screaming. Sangwon's heart skipped a beat. She seemed to have felt something, but before she could think it through, she heard a scream. Ah! Followed by a splash, second young mistress of the Shi family fell into the pond. Help! Help! Second young mistress Shi slapped the pool with all her might, causing the water to splash everywhere. Her whole body was bobbing up and down in the water. This. Second old mistress Shi's legs gave way, and she fell to the ground. Her face was pale, and the servants stood there in a daze. Quickly call for help, quickly call for help. Sangwon shouted. The servants were jolted awake. One of them shouted and ran off while the other 2 went forward to help second old mistress Shi up. Sangwon was at a loss and her face was pale. Seeing second old mistress Sher staring at her and walking towards her, her face became even paler. Delang's wife. Second old mistress Sher's gaze was fixed on her, and her pale face squeezed out a stiff smile. Sang-won subconsciously stepped back, and her lips moved. Second aunt. Eldest sister-in-law. A voice came from behind the fake mountain. Sang-won and second old mistress Sher subconsciously looked up, and saw Shirlien standing there in a daze with a maidservant. In her hands, she was holding a flower branch. Niece. Second old mistress Sher hurriedly called out. However, Shirlien glanced at her in fear. She let out a soft, "Ah!" and ran away with her maidservant. Second old mistress Sher panicked and repeatedly called out, "Niece! Niece, come back!" How could Shirlien hear her? Sang-won secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She leaned against the pavilion pillar weakly, and her back was drenched in cold sweat. Second Sher family's young mistress was quickly rescued and carried back home. The second household was in a state of chaos again. Wang Sher also went to take a look, and called for second old master Sher to enter the side hall. The two of them talked about something, and second old master Sher lost his temper and scolded his wife. The originally chaotic situation became even more chaotic. It's all this servant's fault. This servant shouldn't have left. Fortunately, young mistress is fine if not. In Ning Garden, Luya said with lingering fear. It has nothing to do with you, don't blame yourself. Sang-won shook her head and smiled. She was the one who sent Luya away, because she wanted to walk around alone. Thank you, young mistress. Luya looked at her gratefully. Seeing that her face was still pale, she smiled and helped her up. Young mistress, are you frightened? Why don't you lie down and rest for a while? This servant will ask someone to prepare a bowl of calming soup. Sang-won smiled and nodded. She laid on the chaise lounge and covered her chest with an embroidered blanket. She was indeed frightened. Second young mistress Sher must have decided to make things difficult for her today, and purposely angered second old mistress Sher. She just happened to pass by and was stopped by her. However, Sang-won did not blame her. After all, she only did it in passing and did not really set her up. Chapter 57. The one who truly frightened her was second old mistress Sher. If not for the sudden appearance of Shirlien and her servant, second old mistress Sher would have definitely made her the scapegoat. The three maidservants who were present at the scene were all her people, so it would be a piece of cake for her to silence them. Shirlien's appearance made her unsure if Shirlien had seen anything, so she let her off. Sang-won could not imagine what Wang would think if she pushed her sister-in-law into the pond, and how Gu Fangzi would make a fuss about it. After all, second young mistress Sher had no enmity with her, nor did she have any interest in the matter. She did not even have an excuse to explain herself, and the only thing she could say was that it was an accident. However, there was no evidence to back up such a statement, and it was up to the imagination of the listener. From now on, she would never go to the garden for no reason. Even if she did, she would have to have her own people by her side. Sang-won thought to herself. Not 2 days later, second young mistress Sher's mother and sister-in-law came knocking. Seeing her daughter lying on the bed in a daze, aggrieved manner, Madame Zhou was heartbroken. She cried bitterly and scolded her daughter indirectly. That Zhou family's daughter-in-law was also capable. She persuaded her while scolding indirectly. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law scolded second Lord Sher and second old mistress Sher until their faces turned red with shame. In the end, Wang had no choice but to step in and appease old mistress Zhou. She even used her status as the eldest sister-in-law to reprimand second Lord Sher and his wife. Only then did old mistress Zhou stop crying. Naturally, old mistress Zhou insisted on bringing her daughter home to recuperate. However, second old mistress Sher was anxious and strongly disagreed. It was already shameful enough that her son eloped with a brothel prostitute. If her daughter-in-law wanted to return home to recuperate, what would people say about her? Since old mistress Zhou was in the right, why would she be afraid of her? She began to complain about her daughter's grievances and her son-in-law. She even asked second old mistress Sher when her son-in-law would return. Second old mistress Sher was speechless and could only watch as old mistress Zhou ordered the servants to pack her daughter-in-law's bags and left the Sher household on the same day. After hearing what Luya said, Sangwon could not help but secretly envy second young mistress of the Shi family. At the very least, when she returned in the future, second madam would not dare to treat her like before. There was no such thing as an impermeable wall in the world. Originally, Wang had instructed her to keep the news of Gu Fengzi's impending marriage a secret until Shi Fengji returned, and Sangwon took the initiative to bring it up. However, after 10 to 20 days, almost everyone in the Shi family knew about it. Gu Fengzi kept apologizing in front of Wang. She said that she shouldn't have told her father when he came to visit. She said that she didn't expect him to be so unreliable. He went to her aunt and made a fuss about the betrothal gifts. The whole Fu knew about it. She also said that she shouldn't have been careless and accidentally called her cousin-in-law sister, in front of others. Wang had never counted on Gu Jin's mouth. The only reason why Gu Fengzi revealed it to him was to give him some hope. Who knew that it would backfire? Wang had nothing to say and could only sigh. Forget it. Since the news has already spread, there's no need to hide it anymore. Let's make the necessary preparations. When Fengji returns, we'll settle the matter so as to avoid any more complications. Gu Jin's ruckus became more and more serious, and Wang was getting tired of dealing with it. However, she did not know that it was all Gu Fengzi's doing to force her to make a decision. Gu Fengzi was overjoyed, but her face was full of gratitude. She obediently said that everything would be decided by her aunt. Wang smiled and nodded. She then asked someone to call Sangwon over for a discussion. Sangwon sneered. Gu Fengzi was of course unwilling to let her do this favor to Shi Fengji. She would not let her have the chance to be magnanimous and virtuous. She had already expected that this matter would be leaked in advance. So be it, sooner or later it would be the same. However, if Gu Fengzi were to treat her as a soft persimmon, and let her do whatever she wanted, that would be letting her off too easily. Sangwon's face naturally carried a smile as she said softly, "Mother, don't worry. It's not like our Shi family has never taken in a concubine before. Everything will be done according to the rules. Although time is a little tight, it shouldn't be too difficult. I guarantee that it will be done properly." Gu Fengzi's face turned ugly when she heard that. She was her cousin's childhood sweetheart and her aunt's niece. She grew up in the Shi family, and even managed the inner chambers of the Shi family. How could she, Gu Fengzi, be compared to an ordinary concubine? Wang Shi was startled for a moment. She could tell that Sangwon's gentle words were different from usual. She tried to figure out what she meant, but felt that there was nothing to it. "You're right," Wang said hesitantly. "There are so many people in our Shi family. No matter how tight the time is, there's nothing that can't be done." "Mother, you're right." Sangwon smiled and said, "Our Shi family is a family of rules. Even if time is tight, we have to follow the rules. We can't be laughed at by outsiders." Yes, yes. Wang loved to hear such words. She could not help but smile and nod repeatedly. With that, the tone of this matter was set. It was just an ordinary concubine entering the Shi family. Gu Fengzi gritted her teeth so hard that they almost broke, but there was nothing she could do. After all, she could not ask for any conditions personally. Gu Fengzi could not help but think that it would be great if her big cousin was here. It would be easy to talk to him in private. She could not help but feel a little regretful. She should not have made this matter clear so quickly. But then again, big cousin? How long did he expect her to trust him? In comparison, the benefits she was about to get were more worth it. Sangwon smiled again and said, "Although the household has always been managed by my younger sister, we can't let her handle her own marriage. It won't sound good if word gets out. If mother can trust me, Wan Yang is willing to share mother's worries." "Good, good." Before Gu Fengzi could open her mouth, Wang nodded her head in relief. She could not help but smile at Sangwon and said, "My child, mother was worried that you would have some thoughts in your heart. I didn't think that you would be so considerate and virtuous. Then I'll leave this matter to you." "That's not very good." Gu Fengzi did not care about anything else in a moment of desperation and said, "Sister has never taken care of the household before. Can sister handle it? If you make a mistake, won't we lose face for the Shi family? Moreover, if sister has to work so hard for me, I'll feel bad." Wang hesitated and said to Sangwon, That's true. Wan Yang, can you really do it? Li Shi could not stand Gu Fangzi's frivolous attitude. How could she not know what Gu Fangzi was thinking? She sneered in her heart and said with a smile, "Young mistress, don't worry. Young mistress doesn't understand. I, the old slave, will overstep my boundaries and do it. I didn't manage to make it in time for young master's wedding. I'm happy that I can contribute to young master's concubine. Miss Gu, you don't have to feel bad about it." Gu Fangzi was secretly angry, but she could only smile and say, "For Mama to think so highly of me, Fangzi thanks Mama." Li Shi waved her hand and said without any trace of politeness, "Miss Gu, you don't have to thank me. I'm just doing things for young master. It's my duty and I don't deserve Miss Gu's thanks." What she meant was that what she was doing had nothing to do with Gu Fangzi. Even if young master were to marry someone else, she would still do the same. Gu Fangzi smiled embarrassedly and gave Wang a wronged look. Wang gave her a comforting look. Of course, she would not reprimand Mama Li and said with a smile, "Since that's the case, then it's settled. This matter will be handed over to Wan Yang. I'll need sister's help." Sang Wan smiled and said, "Mother, don't worry. Mama is old and experienced. I'll humbly seek her advice and discuss everything with her. Old slave will also do his best to support young mistress." Mama Li added. When Gu Fangzi heard that, she felt dizzy. Unexpectedly, the words that made her even more dizzy came after that. Mama Li continued, "Missy, there's one more thing. Old slave has spoken out of turn. The hierarchy in the household cannot be messed up. Miss Gu is a concubine after marrying into the household. With young mistress in the household, there's no reason for a concubine to be in charge. Missy, what do you think?" Wang could not help but look at Sangwan. She thought about how she had already wronged her daughter-in-law because of Gu Fangzi. Moreover, her daughter-in-law's performance in the Zhuang household was also quite capable. With the help of Mama Li, the steward's wife, and the housekeepers, it was better to leave the household to her. What's more, leaving the household to a concubine to manage was indeed unseemly. She nodded and smiled. "I almost forgot about it if you didn't mention it. That's right, Wan Yang, from today onwards, I'll leave the household to you. If there's anything you don't understand, you can discuss it with Mama Li and the other housekeepers. Oh, and there's also Fangzi. She's very familiar with the household, so you can discuss it with her more. Fangzi, you can't hide anything from her." Gu Fangzi was so depressed that she almost vomited blood. But now she had not even married into the household, and all of a sudden, she had nothing left. "Aunt Wang." Gu Fangzi was so angry that she was about to spit fire, but on the surface, she smiled happily and acted coquettishly. How would Fangzi dare? From today onwards, we'll be a real family. Even if Aunt Wang did not mention it, Fangzi will still help sister manage the household. Wang did not seem to understand the meaning behind Gu Fangzi's words and nodded with a smile. Aunt Wang is relieved to hear that. This shameless woman. How could young master fall for such a person? Mama Li secretly sneered and said, "Missy, since this matter has been settled, the old slave thinks it's best to quickly pick a date to send Miss Gu home. This sedan chair has to be carried out from the Gu household." Gu Fangzi was stunned and was speechless. "You're right." Wang held her forehead and laughed. "Thank you for reminding me, otherwise I wouldn't have thought of this. Since there's no need to trouble two people, this matter, Wan Yang." "Mother, don't worry. In these 2 days, Wan Yang will arrange for a carriage to send younger sister back. The household should also hurry to tidy up," Sang Wan said with a smile. Mama Li continued, "Before Miss Gu leaves, I'll have to trouble you to hand over the keys and make sure everything is clear, so as to avoid trouble." "Of course." Gu Fangzi squeezed out a few words from between her teeth, and the smile on her face was somewhat sinister. Chapter 58. Young mistress, just you wait. Once she marries into the family, she'll be a concubine. Young mistress, please act like you're the first wife. You can do whatever you want to him, and manipulate him however you want. Let's see if she dares to say a single word of no. In Ning Garden, Mama Li was full of fighting spirit as she spoke. Once she heard that Gu Fangzi was about to marry into the family, Mama Li was shocked and angry at first, But after she calmed down, she seemed to have a card up her sleeve. Instead, she had a calmness as if the dust had settled. When she was the young miss of a cousin, other than Big Madam, no one could do anything to her. Once she became a concubine, no one would be able to protect her. Realizing this, Mama Li even hoped that Gu Fangzi would marry into the family as soon as possible, so that she could use Sangwon's identity to properly discipline her. She wanted to see if she could still act like a vixen. It was precisely because she understood Mama Li's thoughts that Sangwon didn't tell Mama Li a single word about her grievances in this matter. She also didn't ask Mama Li to help stop or disrupt this matter. This was because she knew that not only would Mama Li not agree, but she would also be disgusted. No matter how much Mama Li didn't like Gu Fangzi, as long as Shi Fengju liked her, she wouldn't oppose her marrying into the family. She only disliked Gu Fangzi for not being obedient enough, and didn't serve Shi Fengju as if he was the sky. What Mama Li wanted to do was to help her discipline Gu Fangzi until she became obedient. That was all. Sangwon sighed inwardly. Mama Li had underestimated Gu Fangzi's position in Shi Fengju's heart. Moreover, what qualifications did she have to discipline Gu Fangzi? Shi Fengju wouldn't agree either. In the main courtyard, Wang was nagging at Gu Fangzi, telling her to be patient for a few days when she returned home. She also told her to bring more money and her personal maidservant back with her. She also told her not to have any conflicts with her father. Gu Fangzi nodded from time to time as she listened to her advice, reluctant to leave. "Aunt, I really can't bear to leave you. When I'm not by your side, you have to take good care of yourself. It's getting hotter by the day, so don't be greedy for the cold. Don't use too much of those cold things. Don't go out at noon when the sun is high. And don't stay cooped up in the house all day. Go out for a walk in the morning and evening, it's good for your health." Wang couldn't help but feel reluctant. Holding her hand, she smiled and said, Okay, Aunt knows. Hee, you're still the closest to your aunt after all. You should go home. Don't worry, your aunt won't mistreat you. She then smiled and said, The next time we meet, you should call your aunt Mother. Mother Jiang, who was at the side, raised her eyelids and opened her mouth, but didn't say anything. Gu Fangzi's eyes lit up, and she nodded shyly. And Fangzi, I'm also looking forward to that day. After saying that, she felt embarrassed and hurriedly left while Wang laughed happily. When she returned to Peony Park, there were 2 or 3 stewards' wives waiting for her. When they saw her, they hurriedly went forward to greet her with a smile. Each of them had something to report, or they took out a tile to retrieve something. Gu Fangzi then braced herself and took care of them one by one. The stewards' wives wanted to curry favor with their future grandaunt, who held real power, so they poured out flattery like water. If it was any other time, Gu Fangzi would definitely be full of smiles and proud of herself. All 36,000 pores on her body would exude a sense of comfort. However, when she thought about how she would soon have to hand over her power, these words were especially grating on her ears. When she thought about the expressions of these stewards' wives after she lost her power, Gu Fangzi couldn't help but shiver. No, she wouldn't back out so easily. Gu Fangzi used excuses to delay things, and dragged it on for another 4 to 5 days. Sangwon also didn't want to rush her too much, so she let Mama Li speak to her. She clearly told her that if she didn't hand over her power, there would be no way to arrange for her marriage. If anything were to go wrong, she would have to deal with it herself. Gu Fangzi was conflicted, but she knew that Sangwon was telling the truth. Wang Shi had already handed this matter over to Sangwon to handle, so it was up to Sangwon to make the arrangements. She couldn't possibly command the Shi family to prepare for her marriage, or else she would become a laughingstock. Gu Fangzi had no choice but to say that there were still some small matters that needed to be settled. At the latest, she could hand them over to Sangwon in 2 days. After hearing that, Sangwon put the matter aside for the time being. Coincidentally, a servant from the second gate came to report, Young mistress's brother is here. Gu Fangzi was still hating Sangwon, so when she heard that someone from the Sang family came, she said in a bad mood, Why again? Did he say something? The servant smiled and replied, He said that he was passing by and came to see young mistress. What a nice way to put it. I think he's here to take advantage of us. Our young mistress is busy. Mama, Take a few silvers from the account and send him away. Lan Xiang sneered. Slap her. Young mistress's brother is not someone you can talk about. Gu Fengzi glared at Lan Xiang, and Lan Xiang quickly smiled and admitted her mistake. The old maid didn't dare to make a sound. She just pretended to be perfunctory and smiled. Ai, why aren't you leaving? Are you waiting for our young mistress to ask you to stay for tea? Lan Xiang saw that the servant was still standing there and scolded her. The servant secretly despised her, but on the surface, she respectfully smiled and said, Old slave hasn't asked for young mistress Gu's opinion yet. Gu Fengzi glared at her and said impatiently, Don't you have ears? Didn't you hear what Lan Xiang said? Why aren't you leaving? I'm busy. How would I have the time to deal with your messy business? The servant secretly cursed her bad luck. She was afraid that Gu Fengzi would settle the score with her later, so she forced a smile and said, Then this old servant will take 10 silvers from the public account. Seeing Gu Fengzi's cold glare, she hurriedly changed her words. 5 silvers for second young master Gu, and you won't trouble my am? Go go. Gu Fengzi waved her hand impatiently. The old maid turned around and left after receiving the order. Who knew that the servant would meet Hong Yi on the way and tell her about this matter? Hong Yi hurriedly returned to Ning Garden to tell Sangwon. Sangwon couldn't help but be annoyed and lightly said, If it wasn't for something, eldest brother wouldn't have come. Luya, quickly go and take a look. I'll be there soon. Luya agreed and smiled. Young mistress, you misheard. It's not eldest young master Gu, it's second young master Gu. What? Sangwon's expression changed and she was so shocked that she almost jumped up. She stared at Hong Yi and said urgently, Did you hear wrongly? It's second young master Gu? Hong Yi was shocked and dazed. She hurriedly nodded. Yes, Lu Mama is right. It's second young master Gu. Quickly go. Sangwon didn't have time to change her clothes and hurriedly ordered Luya. Quickly go. Run, you must make second young master Gu stay for me. If he's already gone, then have the servant chase after him. Quickly go. Luya had never seen Sangwon so flustered before. In an instant, she panicked as well. Ai. She lifted her feet and ran out. Let's go quickly too. Sangwon didn't care about Hong Yi, Xingji, and the others' bewildered expressions and hurriedly led them outside. It's second brother. She actually forgot. How could she forget? It was the same in her previous life. Second brother was on his way to Hangzhou to participate in the provincial examination. He passed by Qingzhou and stopped by to say goodbye. Who knew that he would be ridiculed by Gu Fengzi and the Shi family? He left in a fit of anger. The next day, bad news came. The boat he was on had an accident in the canal, and he himself had drowned. In this life, the tragedy couldn't be repeated. Sang Yufei had been waiting in the Shi family's gatehouse for a long time. When he finally saw the servant come out, he hurriedly went forward to ask for news of his sister. Unexpectedly, the servant, Mama Lu, glanced at him and stuffed 2 pieces of silver into his hand. She said, Young Master Gu, take these and hurry on your way. Young mistress is not free, so she won't come to see you. Sang Yufei was stunned. My sister really said that? Sang Yufei asked indifferently. He didn't believe a single word. This servant didn't seem like a good person. Besides, he knew his sister's personality very well. What are you saying, young Master Gu? Gu Fengzi had told her that anyone who came to visit, especially the Sang family, should be reported to her first. Mama Lu happily went to report, thinking that she would be rewarded. Who knew that she would be scolded? At this time, Mama Lu had a stomach full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. She snorted coldly and said in a strange tone, Could it be that my uncle thinks I'm lying? Our Shi family is a place with rules. This old woman doesn't have the guts. She then softly muttered, Which guest doesn't send a visiting card first? This old woman is letting you off easy by informing you. Country people don't know the rules. Sang Yufei was, after all, a pure scholar. He still had the pride of a scholar. Hearing those words, his face burned with shame and anger as he thought to himself, The Shi family is too much. He was too thin-skinned to make a scene with a servant. He sneered, stuffed the 2 pieces of silver into the servant's hand, and turned to leave. Mama Lu was stunned. TSK. She snorted and weighed the silver pieces in her hand. Satisfied, she put them into her purse. If you don't want them, then forget it. This old woman wants them. Money won't bite you. When Luya ran over, panting, Sang Yufei had already left. Oh, Miss Luya. What happened? Mama Lu saw Luya panting and looking around. She couldn't help but wonder. Luya was out of breath. She grabbed her and asked, Second young master, where's second young master? Where did second young master go? Mama Lu secretly cursed and wanted to slap herself. Why did Tong Hongye suddenly talk so much? She changed the topic. Second young master? What's second young master? I don't know. Luya was no longer the same as before. Seeing Mama Lu's expression, she knew something was wrong. She pointed at her and said sternly, Don't play dumb with me. He's young mistress's second young master. Where is he? Did he leave? Mama Lu wasn't afraid of Luya, but she was afraid of Luya's godmother, Mama Li. She didn't dare to hide it and stammered, Left. Second young master said he was just passing by to say hello. If there's nothing else, he left. How long has he been gone? Sangwon had also rushed over. She asked Mama Lu coldly with a sullen face. Mama Lu couldn't help but get angry. She thought, Why are you all venting your anger on me today? Taking advantage of the fact that Sangwon wasn't the head of the household, she said with a cold face, He just left a while ago. Sangwon glared at her and ordered Luya, You go personally. I don't care what method you use. Bring people to chase second young master back. Go quickly. Yes, young mistress. Luya rolled her eyes and hurried off. Sangwon was so angry that her face turned ugly. She flung her handkerchief and coldly ordered Hongye, Invite Lady Wu here. Chapter 59. Servant Wu was in charge of the Shi family's rules and regulations. Nanny Lu immediately panicked, but she forced a smile and asked, Young mistress, why are you looking for Sister Wu? Sangwon glanced at her coldly and didn't say anything. When Xingji saw this, she scolded Nanny Lu. How dare you? Does young mistress need to explain everything to you? Nanny Lu didn't know what to say, so she smiled and said, Then old slave won't disturb young mistress. Old slave still has something to do, so I'll leave first. Stop. Sangwon said coldly. Young mistress, do you have any orders? Nanny Lu was shocked. Sangwon ignored her and walked towards Baoxia Hall. Xingji shouted at Nanny Lu. Just do as young mistress says. Don't talk so much nonsense. Hurry up and follow me. As she spoke, she caught up with Sangwon and helped her. Nanny Lu couldn't do anything. She lightly slapped her mouth and followed her nervously. When servant Wu arrived, she greeted them politely and asked what was going on. Sangwon pouted at Xingji. You tell servant Wu what's going on. Yes, young mistress. Jida answered and told her everything that had happened. Servant Wu's expression changed slightly, and she glanced at Nanny Lu. Mrs. Wu's casual words could give Mrs. Lu a hard time. Mrs. Lu panicked at once. In a hurry, she didn't care about anything else and shouted, I deserve to die. She hurriedly knelt down and begged for mercy. It's not old slave's fault. It was Miss Gu who ordered me to send second uncle away, with 5 taels of silver. Miss Gu said there was no need to tell young mistress. How dare you? Sangwon coldly cut her off and sneered. You wicked woman, you don't even know how to lie. My family came to see me. What does it have to do with Miss Gu? Miss Gu isn't a stupid person. Why would she give such an unreliable order? Even if it's an order, it should be for you to go to Ning Garden and report to me. The old slave wasn't lying. It's the truth. Mother Lu protested. You still dare to be stubborn. Sangwon was furious. She pointed at her and said, I think you've gone senile. Do you want to invite Miss Biao here and confront her face to face? Mama Lu almost blurted out the word good, but she held it back. Her face instantly turned pale. She wasn't completely confused. She knew that even if Gu Fangzi came, she wouldn't admit to it. Besides, she didn't have any evidence. Even if she did, she wouldn't be able to survive in the Shi family if she offended Gu Fangzi. Not only would he be in trouble, but his whole family would also be in trouble. This servant is foolish. This servant is muddle-headed. This servant must have been possessed by a demon to do such a foolish thing, and even spout nonsense. Young mistress, please be magnanimous and spare this servant. This servant doesn't dare anymore. This servant doesn't dare anymore. Mother Lu slapped her face left and right, crying and begging for mercy. Sangwon frowned and gave Xingji a look. Xingji's pretty face darkened and she scolded. Shut up! How can you make a fuss in front of young mistress? Are there any rules in this house? Mother Lu subconsciously shrunk her shoulders and lay on the ground, not daring to make a sound. She only looked at Sangwon with a pair of pleading eyes. Sangwon was usually good-tempered, but that didn't mean she didn't have a temper. If people came knocking on her door, she wouldn't be able to live a peaceful life in the future. Her face was still calm as she coldly glanced at Servant Wu. Servant Wu hurriedly stepped forward and replied, "It's this servant's fault for not being strict enough and letting the servants offend young mistress." Servant Wu usually had a good relationship with Mama Li, so she already knew that Sangwon would soon be in charge of the house. Seeing that Sangwon didn't say a word and didn't say a word of forgiveness, she knew that she wanted to make an example out of Mother Lu. Servant Wu decided to do her a favor and continued. Mother Lu was muddle-headed and offended her superiors. According to the rules, she should be punished with 20 paddles and half a year's worth of salary. She should be sent to the farmstead to do manual labor. Young mistress! Mother Lu screamed and fell to the ground. Sangwon's expression relaxed a bit. She didn't have any intention of speaking up for Mother Lu. Instead, she asked faintly, "How many people are there in their family? What are they doing in the house?" Servant Wu's heart couldn't help but jump. She thought that young mistress was very fierce. She hurriedly replied, "Mother Lu's family of 4. Other than the 2 of them, there is a son and a daughter. Their work in the house isn't important. We might as well let them reunite in the farmstead. Then it's settled. Let's do it according to the rules." Sangwon nodded and left with Xingji. She didn't even look at Mother Lu. "Yes, young mistress." Servant Wu didn't dare to breathe too loudly. She respectfully turned to the side. "Farewell, young mistress." Servant Wu secretly reminded herself that she would rather offend concubine Gu than young mistress. Young mistress was the mistress of the house. This was a clean move. Miss Gu was removed from the blame, and Mother Lu was punished to death. It was done beautifully. Miss Gu couldn't say anything. Even if she wanted to speak up for Mother Lu, she couldn't. Otherwise, it would be equivalent to indirectly confirming Mother Lu's words. How could she live with her face? However, if she didn't speak up for Mother Lu, everyone knew that Mother Lu was her scapegoat. Seeing Mother Lu's end, they couldn't help but feel disappointed. In the future, who would be willing to work for her? Even if they did, they would have to weigh the pros and cons first. On the contrary, young mistress not only established her power so that no one dared to look down on her, she also showed the magnanimity of a legal wife towards a concubine. Miss Gu couldn't help but accept her kindness. Seeing that Luya had finally chased her second brother back, Sangwon finally let out a sigh of relief. She hurriedly smiled and said, "Second brother, you too. Since you came to see me, why didn't you see my face before leaving?" Sang Yufei was also a bit embarrassed. He didn't want to talk about the previous matter and upset his sister. He could only stammer with a smile and said, "I didn't have anything important to do. I was afraid that you would be busy, so I thought about it and let it go." "No matter how busy you are still my brother." Sangwon glared at him and said with dissatisfaction, "Besides, you participating in the provincial examination is such an important matter. No matter what, I should properly send you off." After saying this, she said in an unquestionable tone, "Second brother, you have to stay with me for a few more days." Sang Yufei originally wanted to refuse, but seeing his sister's angry appearance, he couldn't bear to disappoint her. Moreover, he also wanted to see how his sister was doing in the Shi family, so he smiled and agreed. Sangwon let out a sigh of relief and smiled. "That's great. I haven't had a good chat with second brother in a long time." As she said this, she ordered the servants to clean up the guest room and brought Sang Yufei to see Wang. At the entrance to the main courtyard, Shirlian just happened to come out from Wang's place. When she saw Sang-won and Sang Yufei, she was stunned. She wanted to avoid them in time, but after a moment of hesitation, she went forward and curtsied to Sang-won with a smile. Sister-in-law. Ever since that day by the pond, Shirlian and Sang-won's relationship had become much closer than before. Occasionally, she would go to Sang-won's place to sit and chat. Whether it was intentional or not, Shirlian had helped her that day. When she took the initiative to visit and express her goodwill, Sang-won was happy to receive her. After a while, the two of them became much more familiar with each other. Sang Yufei had left early and stood to the side. Sang-won held Shirlian's hand and pulled her up. She nodded and smiled. Come and chat with mother? Is mother all right now? Shirlian was absent-minded for a moment. She hurriedly smiled and shook her head. Mother is chatting with Nurse Jiang and the others. It's fine. Sister-in-law, quickly go in. I won't delay you any longer. I'll go talk with you later. Sang-won smiled and nodded. She watched as Shirlian left, and then went in with Sang Yufei. Wang saw that Sang Yufei was handsome, polite, scholarly, and very refined. She liked him a little and treated him very politely. When she heard that he was going to Hangzhou to take the exam, Wang said enviously, That's great. Second uncle is handsome, so his knowledge must be good as well. Once he goes, he'll definitely pass the exam. It'll be great if my Sanlang can be so promising. Sang-won smiled reluctantly. Sang Yufei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He couldn't help but think. Is there an inevitable relationship between handsome people and knowledge? However, it could be seen that his sister's mother-in-law was quite interesting. At least, she wasn't the kind of person with a strange temperament. Thank you for your kind words. If I pass the exam, I'll definitely come to visit you again. Sang Yufei cupped his hands and smiled. Good. Wang nodded and smiled. We're all relatives, so we should visit each other more often. It doesn't matter if you don't pass the exam. Second uncle is still young. Next time, if second uncle comes, let me know in advance. I'll have someone bring my Sanlang back, and let second uncle give him some pointers. Sang Yufei was startled. The smile on his face was a little stiff as he answered vaguely. Sang-won also felt a little uncomfortable. The exam was around the corner. Although her mother-in-law didn't mean it, it really didn't sound good. She was afraid that her mother-in-law would say something even more disgusting, so she quickly smiled and said, I heard that third uncle is one of the top few in Yuanchang Academy. His knowledge must be very good. Mother, you're too modest. Sang Yufei was also slightly surprised. So third young master is in Yuanchang Academy. The headmaster there is an old Han Lin who retired from the capital. He's the most knowledgeable. Third young master will be able to pass the exam soon. There wasn't a single mother who didn't like to hear others praise their son. Wang was no exception. Hearing this, she smiled and said cheerfully, Second uncle really knows how to talk. Hee, if that day really comes, my wife will be so happy that she won't be able to sleep. As she spoke, she smiled and sighed. He's just 16 this year. He's still a little young. I'll let him try in the next exam. At that time, second uncle will give him some pointers. Sang Yufei quickly agreed with a smile. Sang-won was secretly amused. She didn't expect second brother to be so proficient in flattery. Her mother-in-law was so happy that she was about to turn into a flower. Mother, Sang-won took advantage of the situation and said with a smile, the journey back will be tiring. I want second brother to stay in the residence for a few more days. Before Sang-won could finish, Wang quickly nodded and said with a smile, Of course. It's still early anyway. Second uncle should stay for a few more days. Feel free to stay here. If you need anything, just tell your sister. Sang Yufei quickly stood up and thanked her. Wang smiled and raised her hand to dismiss the formalities. She smiled and said, You siblings are all the same. So polite. Don't be like this. There's no need to be so polite as a family. Sang-won smiled and agreed. She brought Sang Yufei out. Chapter 60. After inviting Sang Yufei to Ning Garden, Sang-won smiled. Before she could exchange greetings, her second brother's face darkened. He questioned her. Wan Yang, Are you hiding something from us? Sang-won was startled. She knew that the us he was referring to was him, her eldest brother, and her sister-in-law. Second brother. Why do you say that? Aren't I perfectly fine? Sang-won smiled. Sang Yufei stared at her without making a sound. In this silent confrontation, Sang-won finally couldn't resist and slowly lowered her eyes. She forced a smile and said, Second brother, what is second brother trying to say? At this time, the Sang family still didn't know that Gu Fangzi was about to enter the family. Wang had always been lazy, afraid that the Sang family would make a fuss if they found out. If that happened, she wouldn't be able to handle it. She wanted to wait for Shifengju to return, and then have Sang-won tell them. When that time came, her son would be there to deal with it. I just feel that it's a bit strange, Sang Yufei smiled faintly. An old servant of the second gate dares to overtly obey and disregard a proper young mistress like you. Wan Yang, what is going on? Sang-won smiled bitterly. Her second brother was different from her eldest brother. He wasn't easy to fool. She thought about how Luya had let slip in front of her eldest brother and sister-in-law during the Dragon Boat Festival. Her eldest sister-in-law had always been quick to speak and couldn't hold back her words. She guessed that she had already told her second brother everything. Sang-won said faintly, right now it's mother-in-law's niece Miss Biao, who is helping her manage the household. It's inevitable that the servants would be foolish enough to look down on me. I've already dealt with that old servant harshly just now. As she said that, she told Sang Yufei the result of her actions. I've always had a good temper. I don't want those foolish people to think that I'm easy to bully. That's why today's matter happened. I believe that after today's incident, it won't happen again. Sang Yufei pondered for a moment and couldn't help but believe some of it. He smiled and said, So that's how it is. Then I'm relieved. Sang-won smiled and said, I'm already an adult. What's there to be worried about? If I still need my two brothers and sister-in-law to worry about everything, I really, thinking that her two brothers and sister-in-law were worried about her. Sang-won's heart was touched, and her eyes couldn't help but moisten. Silly girl, Sang Yufei laughed and said. Since your parents are no longer around, isn't it only right for your brothers and sisters-in-law to care for you and dote on you? If you don't marry well, how can we explain it to our parents in the underworld? Thinking of the happy times the three siblings had spent together when they were young, although they weren't rich, that kind of state of mind was really very comfortable and happy. Sang-won's heart warmed, and she couldn't help but smile. Her fair and pretty face rippled with a tranquil and gentle smile. Her black glass-like eyes sparkled, and her face glowed. In her previous life, how many precious things had she neglected? In this life, she must be happy, because her happiness was not only her everything, but also a part of the happiness of her beloved and blood-related relatives. Second brother, thank you, big brother and sister-in-law. I'll be fine and won't let you worry. Sang-won smiled and said. Sang Yufei chuckled and sighed. Our Wan Yang has really grown up. She actually knows how to say thank you. Sang-won was a little embarrassed by his words, and was about to act coquettishly when she heard Sang Yufei sigh softly and continue. It's a pity that the older you grow, the more muddle-headed you become, and you've become estranged from your brother. Second brother. Sang-won was stunned, and felt even more embarrassed. The siblings both laughed. Sang Yufei also faintly felt that there was something wrong with that cousin. But he was a man, and it wasn't appropriate for him to criticize an unmarried girl behind her back. He could only beat around the bush and remind Sang-won of some things. Sang-won smiled and dealt with them one by one, but in her heart, she began to worry. The days passed one by one, and when the time came, how would she open her mouth? Sang Yufei stayed with the Shi family for 3 days, and it just so happened that there was a large ship leaving for Hangzhou in 3 days. Sang-won ordered the housekeeper to book a first-class cabin, and only then was she relieved to let Sang Yufei leave. Despite Sang Yufei's objections, she used her mother-in-law's name to arrange for 2 strong servants who were good at swimming to send him to Hangzhou. She secretly gave the 2 servants a death order to not leave second young master's side. And even if second young master wasn't happy, they were not to listen to him. Of course, she would also reward them handsomely. Sang Yufei really didn't understand why she was so nervous. and he only thought that she was too concerned about his exam. While he felt the pressure, he couldn't help but feel warm in his heart. The pressure turned into motivation, and it aroused his fighting spirit. He said to Sangwon with emotion, "Wanyang, don't worry, second brother will definitely come back with the top score. I won't disappoint you." Sangwon said, "I just want second brother to come back safely. There will always be a chance to come back with the top score." Sang Yufei couldn't understand her feelings when she said this, and he only thought that she was comforting him. He nodded, smiled, and said, "Don't worry." Then he turned and left. After Sang Yufei left, Sangwon's heart was tightly clenched in midair, and she couldn't control her imagination. Only when she thought of the two servants who followed him did she feel a little better. It wasn't until 3 days later that the two servants came back to report that second young master had safely arrived in Hangzhou and was staying at an inn, that Sangwon could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Gu Fengzi couldn't delay any longer and reluctantly finished the handover. She took the carriage and left the Shi family with Lan Xiang. Before she left, she couldn't help but look back deeply at the high walls and the imposing Shi family's courtyard, and her heart felt an unprecedented sense of security. She would be back very soon. At that time, this place would truly belong to her, completely and completely. It would belong to her, Gu Fengzi. Sangwon also tidied up her mood. While familiarizing herself with the affairs of the Shi family, she also ordered people to renovate Peony Park and make various preparations. Actually, Sangwon didn't need to worry about these things. Mama Li had long been in high spirits and was waiting to ruthlessly show Gu Fengzi her strength. Sangwon simply handed over the responsibility to her. Mama Li had received her words, and with Wang's explicit instructions, she took up the responsibility. The originally exquisite porcelain and jade ornaments in Peony Park were all stored in the storeroom and replaced with ordinary handicrafts. The entire set of yellow rosewood furniture was also replaced with ordinary firwood furniture. The only thing left was the frame bed inlaid with ornaments and carved with mountain and river characters. Because Shi Fengju also wanted to sleep on this bed, it was left behind. All the curtains, door curtains, brocade canopies, tablecloths, chairs, etc., were all replaced with light pink or pine flowers. Of course, the materials were also lowered by 1 or 2 grades. Mama Li said that this was the treatment a concubine should receive. She even said that if it wasn't for Miss Gu, she wouldn't even be able to live in such a big courtyard like Peony Park. In other words, she was already exceptionally generous to her. In terms of inviting guests and setting up a banquet, Mama Li said that the Shi family had already organized a wedding this year for young mistress. At this time, it wasn't appropriate to invite guests to another banquet. Moreover, there was no one from the Gu family that needed to be invited. Since it was just a small gesture, it was enough. 3 to 5 tables were set up in the household. The masters would be at one table, and the various stewards, old and respectable nannies, as well as the head maidservants of each courtyard, would be enough to liven things up. One couldn't help but feel that it was a little strange, so she smiled and said, "That sounds reasonable, but it seems that Fengzi has been wronged." "Why would she be wronged?" Mama Li hurriedly smiled and said, "Which concubine isn't like this? Missy, don't forget, in the future, she's no longer your niece, but young master's concubine. Our Shi family is a family that respects the rules. If a concubine behaves like a concubine, she won't throw the Shi family's face. If others say that the Shi family favors the concubine and neglects the wife, not to mention others, old Mistress Zhuang will definitely say something." She then added, "Miss Gu has always been sensible, so she will definitely agree to this. This is for the sake of the entire Shi family's face." She absolutely couldn't tolerate old Mistress Zhuang saying that. Wang's expression changed and she said firmly, "That's right. Our Shi family is a family that respects the rules, so we can't be the subject of ridicule." "Missy is right. Then, old slave Zhuang will prepare accordingly." Mama Li smiled. "An old sister has worked hard. You're too kind." "Missy is too kind to old slave Zhuang." The master and servant looked at each other and smiled. Shi Fengju Zhuang had sent a letter saying that he would be back in late July, but who knew that something would come up, and he would only be back in early August. The auspicious time was set for early August. One couldn't help but feel anxious when she heard that. Thinking that it was already this time, there was no need to listen to her niece and give her son a surprise. Thus, she ordered someone to inform Shi Fengju of this matter, so that he could return before the 6th of August no matter what. As for the Sang family, it couldn't be delayed any longer. One could only order Sang Wan to go back and inform Sang Hong and Fong. Sang Wan had no choice but to do as she was told. Sang Hong and Fong's expressions changed when they heard the news. Sang Hong was dumbstruck and couldn't believe it was true. Fong was shocked and sneered. Sure enough, I guessed it right. Sure enough. According to Fong's idea, the Sang family should go to the Shi family and ask for a clear explanation. They should let the Shi family know that the Sang family wasn't so easily bullied. Sang Hong, on the other hand, was afraid that Sang Wan would make things difficult for them in the future. Thus he stopped Fong. Fong angrily scolded, but when she saw that her husband and sister-in-law had no intention of making a scene, she couldn't help but feel disappointed. She sneered angrily. That's true. You proper Sang family members aren't even worried, so why should I make a fuss? You can do whatever you want. To be bullied to this extent and still endure it. The Sang family members are really good at self-restraint. After saying that, she flung her hand and left. Sang Wan's tears immediately flowed out as she called out, "Sister-in-law." She tightly held onto Fong's arm and sobbed. I know that sister-in-law is doing this for my own good. I only have an indescribable gratitude in my heart. But that Gu Fengzi and young master already have feelings for each other. It doesn't matter if it happens sooner or later. Sang Wan stubbornly pulled Fong to sit down, and told them about the matter between Gu Fengzi and Shi Fengju. Sang Hong and Fong were stunned and became even angrier. It's all Big Brother's fault for being muddle-headed. If I had known earlier, this marriage would have been cancelled. Sang Hong was filled with regret. Chapter 61. Fong rolled her eyes at him. You're being muddle-headed again. How can a woman force a man to break off an engagement? Moreover, with the Shi family and Shi Fengju's appearance, if the Shi family were to break off the engagement, who would dare to marry her? Unless this woman had some unspeakable flaw, why would she break off such a good marriage that could not be cultivated in 8 lifetimes? Fearing a cousin who was destined to become a concubine, no one would listen to such a reason. Which young master of a big family did not have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Fong glared at her husband, and was dissatisfied with Sang Wan. Even so, you don't have to be so virtuous. Can't you let her in a year or 2 later? Why do you have to do it now? Aren't you making yourself lose face? Sang Wan smiled bitterly and sighed. Sister-in-law, no matter how muddle-headed I am, I won't be muddle-headed to this extent. Even if I have no face, I can't let the Sang family have no face. But mother-in-law. Fong and Sang Hong looked at each other and understood Sang Wan's meaning. She's going too far. Fong gritted her teeth. Your mother-in-law seems to treat you well, but I didn't expect her to be such a bad person. Don't tell me she's putting on an act in front of us. Sang Wan shook her head and said softly, Mother-in-law is a good person, but she's easily swayed. Moreover, that Gu Fengzi is not young anymore, so? Even so, you don't have to be so impatient. Fong sneered. No matter what, I can't take this lying down. Sister-in-law. Sang Wan squeezed Fong's hand and said gratefully, I know sister-in-law is good to me. I can't wait to dig out my heart to show sister-in-law how grateful I am. But Sang Wan was anxious, hurt and panicked. She was afraid that Fong would be angry and ignore her, so she could not help but cry. Seeing her like this, Fong Shi's heart also tightened. Her heart softened, so she gently patted her back and softly said, All right, let's not cry anymore. It's not worth crying over such a grievance. Sister-in-law shouldn't have said that. You have your own difficulties too. Since things had already come to this point, there was no point in saying anything more. Just let her be. Wait until she enters the door. Then you can take out the money of the legal wife and properly deal with her. Sang Hong could not help but interject. I think Feng Ju is a good person, and your mother's feelings towards you are genuine. That Gu Fengzi is her niece after all. Wan Yang, you should at least consider her feelings. If things get too tense, it won't be good for you. What are you talking about? Fong said hatefully. She's already been bullied to this extent, and you still say that she's not bad. You even told Wan Yang to endure it. In my opinion, you shouldn't be courteous to her. Sang Hong frowned. What do you know? Wan Yang will have to live her life in the future. Now that you've made a scene, how will she live her life in the future? He then sighed. There's no hope for Big Brother anymore. I hope that your second brother can pass the imperial examinations this time and become a grand scholar. When that time comes, not only Gu Fangzi, even the entire Shi family won't dare to do anything to you. Fong was speechless for a moment. After a while she nodded and said, That's more like it. If second brother becomes an official, let's see who dares to look down on our Sang family. Sang Wan felt an indescribable warmth in her heart. She said gratefully, Big brother, sister-in-law, thank you. I'll live my life well in the future. What I should do, I know what to do. As long as I'm in the Shi family, I won't embarrass the Sang family. Good, good, as long as you're open-minded. Sang Hong's brows relaxed slightly. Fong Shi sneered and said, What day is the date set? When the time comes, I want to attend the wedding. Don't cause trouble again. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Fong sneered. If no one goes, the Shi family will think that there's no one left in our Sang family. Sang Hong did not say anything else. The 6th of August. I'll send someone to fetch sister-in-law. Sang Wan said. Good. Then I'll be waiting. Fong clapped her hands and smiled. Sang Wan calmed down a little. She believed that the appearance of her family would at least make the Shi family give her a careful explanation. The servants in the Shi family would not look down on her. The king of hell was easy to avoid, but the little devils were hard to deal with. No one understood this better than Sang Wan, who had lived an extra lifetime. As they were talking, the courtyard door was pushed open heavily, as if someone had walked in. Fong stood up and was about to speak when she heard a female voice carefully trying to curry favor. Big cousin, cousin-in-law, you're here. It's Sang Ro. Fong frowned. Why is she here? Sang Wan raised her handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes and stood up. Big sister Ro. Sang Wan smiled politely. Sang Ro was flattered and quickly went forward to hold Sang Wan's wrist with a smile. Little sister. Long time no see. It's Ro. What's the matter? Fong rubbed her hands on her sleeves and asked with a smile. Hee, that's right. When I saw little sister Wan's carriage, I thought that I hadn't seen little sister Wan for a long time, so I came to talk to you. Sang Ro's smile was a little unnatural. Sang Wan and Fong were a little speechless. The carriage was deliberately parked in a hidden place, because Sang Wan did not want second uncle's family to see it. After speaking with her brother and sister-in-law, she prepared to leave. Who knew that Sang Ro would see it? Fong smiled and said, Oh, Ro's eyesight is getting better and better. How did you know that the carriage that came was definitely your little sister Wan's? Sang Ro quickly smiled and said, That goes without saying. Aside from little sister Wan, who else in our family can afford to sit in such a magnificent carriage and horse? Only little sister Wan has such good fortune. That's true. Fong patted her sleeves. All right, then you guys talk. I'll go make dinner. Fong gave a look and Sang Hong also went out. Sang Wan originally planned to leave, but Sang Ro saw her. She would not be able to hide it from second uncle and second aunt, so she might have to go and sit down later. Cousin, sister-in-law, you guys go ahead. Sang Ro's eyes lit up and her face lit up. Sang Wan and Sang Ro struggled to exchange pleasantries. The two of them did not have much to talk about in the past, and now, they had even less to talk about. In the past, in the eyes of everyone, Sang Wan could be abandoned by the Shi family at any time. Those who were envious and jealous of her engagement all mocked and ridiculed her. Their eyes and hearts were all waiting for the day when she was really unlucky to become a joke. Sang Ro was no exception. Every time she looked at Sang Wan would feel very uncomfortable. At this time, seeing her stiff smile and the words she wanted to say to please but did not know how to express, Sang Wan had the feeling that she had to bite the bullet and deal with it. Look at little sister's dignity and style now. TSK, we don't even dare to think about it. Little sister is really lucky. Look at what big sister is saying. I'm embarrassed. Sang-won forced a smile to deal with it. Sang-ro kept repeating these few words, but not a single one of them was about how she was living in the Sure family. Was her life going well? She lamented in her heart. In this world, only big brother and sister-in-law would treat me as family. Sang-ro smiled, but her envious eyes were glued to Sang-won, unable to move away. She sighed and said, "You've finally come to the end of your suffering. With such a good place to belong, all you have left in this life is to enjoy life. Unlike me, I'm afraid that I won't be able to reach the end of my suffering. I don't ask for anything else. I just want to be scolded and beaten less, and have a stable life." As she said that, she blinked her moist eyes and raised her hand to wipe them. Sang-won could only force a smile and persuade her, "Big sister, don't say that. Second uncle and second aunt will definitely help you." "Them?" Sang-ro snorted and sneered. "I'm not afraid of you laughing at me. What kind of people do you not know? My father will never be able to get out of money his whole life. Other than money, what else is there in his eyes? That mother of mine, hee. I'm afraid that if she doesn't help me, I'll be able to live longer. I'm afraid that one day, when my legs give up and I close my eyes, this crime will be over." As she said that, she began to sob softly. "How can that be? You are second uncle's biological daughter after all. He definitely won't leave you alone. Even if it's for the sake of the Sang family's reputation, he can't just ignore it." Sang-won's mouth was dry as she forced a smile to persuade her. Sang-ro's body stiffened, and she suddenly felt as though there was a light at the end of the tunnel. That's right, why didn't she think of that before? She believed that as long as her father was aware of this, he would more or less have some misgivings. Although he was greedy for money, he still wanted face in front of outsiders. "Perhaps," Sang-ro sniffed and mocked herself. "I just don't know if I can wait until then. Big sister is still young. What are you saying? Young?" These words poked at Sang-ro's sore spot, and her tone became bitter. "Have you seen a 19-year-old girl who hasn't gotten married yet?" Sang-won was stunned. Her eyes widened and she did not know what to do. "My goodness, what does this have to do with me? Why is she venting her anger on me?" "I'm sorry, little sister Won." Sang-ro realized that she had lost her composure and quickly held her hand tightly with a smile. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. Please don't blame me." Sang-won shook her head. "Why would I blame cousin sister?" "That's good. I know that you have always been magnanimous." Sang-ro smiled in relief and praised Sang-won a few more times before saying, "That's right, I wonder if the Sure family still lacks a servant. Good little sister. Why don't you tell father to let me go to the Sure family as a servant? We are sisters, so I can help you." Sang-won was speechless. She looked up and saw Sang-ro's expectant face. Only then did she understand why Sang-ro was trying to get close to her. Just that. How could she be so unreliable? Sang-won thought helplessly. She was her cousin, and their fathers were biological brothers from the same mother. Going to the Sure family as a servant, only she could think of that. How can that be? You are my big sister. How can you go to the Sure family as a servant? Sang-won laughed. Under Sang-ro's covetous gaze, she could not help but feel a little overwhelmed. If you don't want to be a servant, you can be a female housekeeper or something. Sang-ro's eyes sparkled. Don't you rich families have female housekeepers? I will definitely side with you in everything. Sang-won was even more speechless. She could only smile and say, my mother-in-law is in charge of the household now. Furthermore, the female housekeepers in the household are all born in the Sure family, and have been working in the Sure family for more than 10 years. Furthermore, even if they are female housekeepers, they are still servants. How can I trample on my own cousin like this? If this gets out, people will laugh at us. Chapter 62. I don't care, it's fine, it's really fine. Sang-ro said eagerly. Then, why don't you just say that I'm a servant you bought and not say that we're sisters? Good sister, just treat it as doing me a favor and helping me. Is that okay? Good sister. Sang-won could not help but feel angry and secretly sneered. Not say that we're sisters? With Sang-ro's character, How could that be possible? Even if she did not say it openly, she would definitely say it secretly. And after it was exposed, she would definitely say that she did not know anything. That won't do. Sangwon's eyes turned slightly and her expression turned cold. She said faintly, "What kind of scandal would it be if this were to spread out? Wouldn't they say that I, Sangwon, am cold and heartless and cheapen my own sister? I can't bear such a reputation. Cousin, don't say it anymore." Sangro was extremely disappointed and did not give up. She quickly smiled and said, "Yes, I didn't think it through. Sister Wan, don't be angry. Then, don't the Sher family have so many businesses? Which place needs female workers? Can you introduce me? I promise that I'll only work hard and will not mention my relationship with you." She then begged, "Good sister, I just want to rely on my own ability to make a living. Really, I won't embarrass you." Was there an end to it? Sangwon became impatient and could only push it away. "I don't know much about business and I don't know if there's anything suitable for you. And will second uncle and second aunt agree? After all, they are your father and mother." This sentence completely shattered the last bit of hope in Sangro's heart. That's right, as long as her father and mother were around, no matter what she wanted to do, it would be impossible to succeed. Her father only cared about money. If she led him to think in this direction, she still had hope to fool him into agreeing. But that mother, she knew that she would never be able to fool her. "Stupid girl, where the hell did you go? Why aren't you back here to cook for me? There's a lot of housework waiting for you, and you still have time to talk nonsense. Wait for me to serve you. You ran away when I wasn't paying attention. Are you in heat?" Lily's sharp and vulgar curses rang out in the courtyard, followed by the sound of angry footsteps. Was this something an elder should say? Sangwon could not help but be secretly angry. She looked at Sangro, only to see that she had already stood up in fear and trepidation, her face full of fear. Sangwon's anger immediately dissipated. Some people were just like that, lamenting their misfortune and angering their incompetence. Before Fong could stop her, Li had already rushed in like a gust of wind. She grabbed Sangro's ear and scolded her. After scolding her for a while, she realized that Sangwon was also there. She was stunned. After confirming that she was not mistaken, she pushed Sangro aside and said to Sangro with a smile, "Yo, Wanyang, you're back. I'm not dreaming, right?" She rolled her eyes at Fong, who had followed her in, and sneered. "Why didn't you come to second uncle's and second aunt's place? Could it be that you've flown to a higher position and are looking down on us elders?" Sangro saw this and quickly went forward with a flattering smile. "I just came in to invite younger sister Wan to our house." Sangwon could only smile and say, "No way. Second aunt is treating me like an outsider. I was planning to go over in a bit." Li snorted and glared at Sangro, not caring about her flattery. She smiled at Sangwon and said, "Hee, I knew that our Wanyang is the most respectful and filial to her elders. If no one instigated her, she would have gone over long ago." Li glanced at Fong as she said this. "Oh, second aunt isn't talking about me, right?" Fong giggled and said, "Second aunt, you have to have evidence before you speak. I'm busy making lunch with Nanny Sue right now. I was thinking of calling second uncle and second aunt over for lunch after I'm done. I'm not happy with second aunt's words." Li took a deep breath and smelled the thick smell of chicken soup. She was happy and said with a smile, "Hey, when did I talk about you? No matter how bad things are between you and Dalong, you wouldn't dare to disrespect your elders. I'm talking about this wretched girl." Li turned around and poked Sangro's forehead. She scolded, "What are you still standing there for? Waiting for the new year? Why aren't you going back to invite your father and younger sister over for lunch? Don't come. Hurry up and eat something and go to the fields. The vegetable fields in Donglongta haven't been plowed yet. You're always eating and being lazy. Does rice just fall from the sky?" Sangro's heart was full of resentment, but she didn't dare to contradict Li. She just raised her eyes and looked at Sangwon pleadingly. Sangwon pretended not to see it and lowered her head to drink tea. This was her brother and sister-in-law's home. It wasn't her place to make the decision to ask them to stay. Moreover, she didn't want to get involved in the family affairs of the second branch. Sang-ro was secretly disappointed that Sang-won didn't see the look in her eyes. Before Lee could scold her a second time, she hurriedly turned around and ran away. I say, Won-young, why did you come back? Did you bring something for us? Lee sat down with a chuckle. She wanted to ask Fong to pour a cup of tea, but when she looked up, she found that Fong had already gone back to the kitchen. She didn't dare ask Sang-won to pour tea, nor did she dare ask Luya to do so. She coughed and gave Luya a look. Luya didn't move at all. She couldn't understand what she meant. She could only get up and pour herself a bowl. She cursed in her heart. Damn girl, you're not smart at all. Hearing those words, Sang-won could no longer feel any emotion or anger. She really couldn't get angry at them. She smiled faintly and said, I had something to do in Willowtown, so I came back. Oh, what is it? Lee laughed dryly and asked curiously. Sang-won looked up and smiled. I saw that the door to second aunt's courtyard was closed. I thought second uncle and second aunt weren't home. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Lee knew that she shouldn't have asked and stopped the topic. She smiled and chatted with Sang-won. Not long after, second old master Sang and Sang-yen arrived. Fong came in and said that dinner was ready, so everyone sat down to eat. Sang-won ordered Nanny Sue to give 2 big chicken drumsticks to Sang-kwon and Sang-won. Lee immediately set her eyes on the 2 small chicken drumsticks. She took one for herself and another for Sang-yen. Eat quickly. The 2 of them devoured everything, and soon, there was a big pile of chicken bones in front of them. Sang-yen secretly glanced at Sang-won, who was still eating gracefully, and then at her own parents. She secretly felt embarrassed. The rice and chicken in her mouth tasted as if she was chewing wax. Sang-won successfully completed the task given to her by Wang, and returned to report everything. When she heard that Sang-won's sister-in-law wanted to attend the wedding banquet, Wang didn't think much of it. Instead, she was very happy and smiled, saying that her sister-in-law was too courteous. She even instructed Sang-won to treat her well. Sang-won agreed to all of them. Who knew that just 2 days later, the servant who followed Gu Fengzi to the house, Lan Xiang, came back wearing a plain dress with no hairpins. She cried and said, Old Master Gu has passed away. Wang and Sang-won were stunned. Of course, the 2 of them had different feelings. Gu Jin dead? What happened? He was fine. Why did he suddenly die? Wang stammered. Lan Xiang wiped her tears and said, Old Master Gu got drunk and fell. His head hit a rock and he died. Ayo. Wang held her forehead. What should we do? What should we do? Sang-won saw that Wang was in a daze and Lan Xiang was wiping her tears. She could only say, Mother, the dead should be respected. Let's think about how to handle the funeral. Who else is there in the Gu family? Cousin Fengzi is still young and hasn't experienced such a big event. I'm afraid she's anxious and doesn't know what to do. Yes, you're right. Wang couldn't help but say. Let the housekeeper bring a few people over to help. No matter how much money is spent, just do it. How can there be anyone in the Gu family who can make decisions? They're all unreliable. Nanny Jiang, arrange for 2 more experienced women to accompany Fengzi and advise her. She then instructed Lan Xiang. Alright, don't cry anymore. You're dismissed too. Follow the housekeeper back and serve your family's missy well. Understood? Yes, this servant understands. Missy said that when the funeral is over, she'll come and kowtow to old mistress. Lan Xiang kowtowed and Nanny Jiang hurriedly left to make the arrangements. What an unexpected turn of events. Wang sure sighed. Old people were the most affected by the separation of life and death. Even if she hated Gu Jin in the past, Wang could not help but shed a few tears. Sang-won saw this and quickly persuaded her. Together with Mama Lee, the 2 of them accompanied her. Missy, since things have come to this is fate. Don't think too much about it. Mama Lee saw that Wang's emotions had calmed down and persuaded her a few more times. Then she changed the topic and sighed. Tell me, what should we do now? Miss Gu's marriage, are we still going to do it? That's right, how could she forget about this? Wang's brows could not help but knit together. For a moment she was in a dilemma. There was no such thing as a daughter getting married when her father had just passed away. That was not the way things were supposed to be. What's there to do? Wang sighed and said weakly. Everyone stop. Stop preparing. We won't be treated as a joke. Moreover, it's not proper. Yes, that old slave will arrange it later. Mama Li sighed and said. This Miss Gua, she really has a bad life. Wang Shi's heart was touched. She thought of how Gu Fangzi lost her mother when she was young, and how her father passed away just before she got married. Sure enough, all sorts of unfortunate things happened to her. She nodded her head. You're right, Fangzi's life is indeed bitter. Mama Li said intentionally. I hope that when she marries into the family in the future, young master's good fortune will be able to help her. Wang was startled and her face changed. The words Jink's mother and Jink's father subconsciously jumped into her mind. Following behind those words, the words Jink's husband naturally appeared. Alright, I want to be alone for a while. You all can leave first. Wang was hesitant, but she ordered without any hesitation. Put away all the preparations from before. We'll talk about this again in the future. Although there were many misgivings in her heart, Gu Fangzi was still a niece that she had raised for many years. One could not make the decision to not want her. Chapter 63. Yes, Missy. Mama Li agreed and left. She did not say that out of selfishness to deliberately put Gu Fangzi in a bad light in front of Wang, but Mama Li really had such concerns. What if Gu Fangzi was really so stubborn that she would jinx everything she touched? What would happen to her eldest young master then? What kind of good woman was there in this world? If the eldest young master wanted to take in a concubine, he could choose as he pleased. Who said that it had to be Gu Fangzi? Upon seeing that, Sangwon also excused herself. Oh, and Wang stopped them. Send a letter to Fengjiu as well. Tell him that we won't be doing it for the time being. Tell him not to rush back, and to take his time to settle the matters at hand. Also, don't tell him about the Gu family. Even if we tell him, he won't be able to help anyway. Sangwon and Mama Li quickly agreed. Both of them thought to themselves, look at how troublesome this matter is. Who would have thought that right after the letter was sent over, it would be sent over by Shi Fengjiu's letter? Shi Fengjiu did not write a letter, but a message. He reported that the eldest young master had rushed to Miss Gu's house, and would be back in a few days. Wang's face darkened when she heard that. After a moment of silence, she asked unhappily, how did the eldest young master find out about the Gu family? He saw that old mistress was unhappy and could not help but straighten his back. He forced a smile and said, that Miss Gu sent someone to wait for the eldest young master at Qingzhou's pier. After the eldest young master read her letter, he hurriedly hired a carriage and rushed there. He told this servant to report back to old mistress. Hearing this, Wang Shi glared at Qianhe and scolded him. He's really something, huh? He's already at the door, but he didn't even come back to see his mother. He's not coming, so what are you still doing here? Hurry up and get away from me. Get lost. Qianhe was scared out of his wits and dared not complain. He kowtowed and hurriedly got up and fled. Mother, don't be angry, Sangwon comforted with a smile. Old Master Gu is a relative after all. Since eldest young master is here, there's no reason for him not to pay his respects. It wasn't that he didn't come back on purpose. Didn't he send Qianhe back to report that he was safe? You're the eldest young master's mother. Who else would he miss if not you? Hearing this, Wang felt a little better. She couldn't help but look at Sangwon and sighed. Wanyang, you're really good. Fortunately, you're here. Otherwise, mother would really be angered to death by that unfilial son. Mother, what are you saying? Sangwon smiled and said, Wanyang has always been under mother's care, and has never done anything for mother. Mother's words, Wanyang is ashamed. Wang smiled. Mother likes your gentle temperament. No matter how I look at it, it makes me feel comfortable. Forget it, mother won't be angry anymore. With such a good wife, what's there to be angry about? Alright, you can go back. I want to be alone for a while. Sangwon smiled and said. Then mother, have a good rest. I have to ask someone to move eldest young master's luggage in. We'll deal with it when he comes back. What a good wife. Wang smiled even more satisfactorily. She smiled and said, Don't tire yourself out. Just let the servants do it. Sangwon nodded and left with a smile. Shi Fengju's returning fleet stopped at Jinling to settle some matters. Unexpectedly, he received a letter from Wang telling him to rush back home to marry Gu Fengzi before the 6th of August. Shi Fengju couldn't help but say, "Nonsense." His first reaction was not Gu Fengzi, but Sangwon. He didn't know what Sangwon was thinking. He didn't know how she was doing. He had clearly promised her. He clearly had a 1-year agreement with her. But now, his mother wanted his cousin to marry into the family. How could he face Sangwon? Shi Fengju was burning with anxiety. He immediately ordered the accompanying shopkeeper and steward to make some arrangements. Then he brought a few servants with him and rushed back to Qingzhou. Whenever he thought of Sangwon's current mood, he was extremely irritated. He couldn't sit or stand still. He wished he could grow wings and fly back home. Who would have thought that on the way, they would encounter an official ship passing by? They had no choice but to wait for 2 days in vain. After the official ship passed by, the civilian ships lined up one by one. The repeated delays caused his mood to become even more irritable and uneasy. When the ship docked at Qingzhou's pier, Shi Fengju's irritated heart finally calmed down. He began to think about what to say to Sangwon and how to turn the situation around. Unexpectedly, things turned out to be so dramatic and unexpected. Shi Fengju would never have dreamed that Gu Fengzi would actually send someone to wait for him at the pier. He also didn't expect that Gu Fengzi's letter would be about such a matter. Gu Fengzi's letter detailed her grief and helplessness. As he read the letter, Shi Fengju could almost see her tear-stained, sorrowful and haggard face. He couldn't ignore her, and could only order someone to return to the residence to report that he was safe. He then brought Chang Huan and a few others to hire a carriage to rush to Gu Fengzi's house. Gu Fengzi was a good-for-nothing, and did not have much interaction with the clan. His fields had long been sold off and the few clan relatives of the Gu family could not gain any advantage. Although Gu Fengzi had become an orphan, the Shi family was still around. No matter how bold the Gu family was, they would not dare to touch Gu Jin's house. Therefore, they were lazy and did not have much interest in Gu Jin's funeral. If not for the Shi family's housekeeper bringing people over, they would have run away in a hubbub. Although she already knew that this bunch of relatives were unreliable, but now that she experienced it personally, Gu Fengzi still felt a chill in her heart. This was the so-called family. If not for the Shi family, she did not dare to imagine what she would have become, and what kind of situation she would be in today. She was afraid that they would gang up and sell her away. Gu Fengzi shuddered. After learning from the painful experience, she was even more determined to hold on to the big tree that was the Shi family. When Shi Fengju rushed to the Gu family, everything was going well with the help of the Shi family's housekeeper. Shi Fengju secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The next day, Gu Jin's funeral was held, and the clan relatives also dispersed. In the simple and crude house, only Gu Fengzi, who was dressed in white, and Shi Fengju were left, as well as the people sent by the Shi family. Head servant Liu, get someone to renovate this courtyard and house tomorrow. Buy everything that needs to be added. Also, get someone reliable to come over and live with Miss Gu. Double the monthly allowance compared to the one in the household, and the extra money can be paid from my account. Shi Fengju swept a glance at the Gu household's four bare walls and sighed silently. Gu Fengzi's body stiffened and she glanced at housekeeper Liu and said softly, "All of you leave first." Everyone left and Gu Fengzi called out softly, "Big cousin." Tears streamed down her face. "Fenger, don't cry, don't be sad." Shi Fengju's heart tightened, and he felt his scalp tingle. "How can I not be sad?" Gu Fengzi choked. "I have nothing now. Even big cousin doesn't want me anymore. What's the point of living?" "Where did that come from?" Shi Fengju was shocked and quickly said, "Fenger, I never said that." "But you already did," Gu Fengzi sobbed. "Otherwise, why would you order housekeeper Liu to do that?" Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. "Fengzi, what nonsense are you thinking? This courtyard is so dilapidated. How can you get used to living here? You still have to observe filial piety. Didn't you set the date for me to marry into the family on the 6th of August? Gu Fengzi raised her teary eyes and asked sadly. Shi Fengju could not react for a moment and said awkwardly, "Fengzi, uncle has just passed away. How can you marry into the family? You mean you want me to mourn for 3 years? Gu Fengzi's eyes flashed and she looked at him aggressively. Shifengju quickly said, 3 years will pass very quickly. Fengzi, I promise you. I will marry you into the family in 3 years. Shifengju's eyes lit up and his heart heaved a sigh of relief. He subconsciously thought 3 years. After 3 years, Wan Yang wouldn't be in the Shi family anymore, right? He should be happy. But at this moment he did not feel happy at all. On the contrary, he felt slightly depressed. Gu Fengzi seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. She laughed sadly and asked painfully, Big cousin, 3 years, 3 years. Do you know how old I will be after 3 years? How can I wait for 3 years? Shifengju felt incredulous, and something in his heart broke. The cousin in front of him looked so unfamiliar that he felt as if he had never met her before. Uncle is your biological father. How can you not mourn for him? He's not. Gu Fengzi shouted emotionally. I don't have such a father. I don't. He never fulfilled his responsibilities as a father and never raised me. Why should I mourn for him? He caused my mother's death, and now he wants to harm me for the rest of my life. I hate him to death. Fenger, calm down. Shifengju hurriedly went forward and held her shoulders. Fenger, you can't say such things. No matter how wrong he was still your father. A dead person is like a lamp being extinguished. Don't say anything. If others hear you, what will they think of you? I don't care. I don't care at all. Gu Fengzi threw herself into his arms and cried bitterly. She hugged him tightly and cried, I only care about you, I only care about you. Big cousin, you can't abandon me. You can't. I didn't say I didn't want you. No, Shifengju murmured. He raised his arm to pat her back, but he didn't realize that he couldn't control himself. Then let me marry you. On the 6th of August. Gu Fengzi raised her head from his arms and wiped her tears. Her eyes were shining as she said, marrying me during the 100-day mourning period is not unheard of. Shifengju was stunned. He didn't expect Gu Fengzi to say such a thing. Fenger, if, Shifengju's voice was weak and hoarse, if I say that after you mourn for 3 years, I will marry you as my wife, are you willing? Are you willing to wait? Shifengju's heart was in his throat. He looked nervously at Gu Fengzi, waiting for her answer. Gu Fengzi noticed the change in his expression and thought that he was just trying to deceive her. She was secretly annoyed and looked at him with resentment before saying faintly, Big cousin, I've always known that you're engaged, and I also know that your wife in this lifetime will never be me. But what does it matter? I love you in my heart. I also know that your feelings for me are true. So I am very satisfied. Chapter 64. She still didn't believe him. After so many years, she still didn't believe him and didn't understand his temperament. Shifengju's heart suddenly felt empty and indescribably disappointed. He didn't give up and said, Fenger, I'm serious. Let's think of a way together. I believe it's possible. After 3 years, I'll take you as my wife. How could Gu Fengzi believe Shifengju's words? She only thought that he was deliberately delaying and brushing her off. 3 years? She sneered inwardly. Who knew what would happen after 3 years? It would be too late by then. If she wanted to observe filial piety, she could only stay in this courtyard. She couldn't even go to the Shi family. As the saying goes, the tea cools when the person is gone. She was afraid that he wouldn't even remember who she was after 3 years. Nothing was more practical than holding him tightly in her hands and guarding him by his side. Big cousin, I really didn't think about coveting the position of your wife, really. As long as I can be with you, even as a concubine, I'll be very satisfied. I'll definitely get along well with cousin's wife and won't make things difficult for you. Gu Fengzi said pitifully, Big cousin, don't tell me you're worried that an orphan like me will cause trouble? I won't. If they can let me have a place to shelter me from the wind and rain, I'll be perfectly satisfied. As she spoke, tears fell down again. Shifengju stared blankly at her. His heart was at a loss. She was satisfied. She said that even as a concubine, she would be satisfied. However, he wasn't satisfied. He loved her and didn't want to wrong her. He wanted her to be on equal footing with him, to be the person who would grow old with him hand in hand for the rest of their lives. When they died, they would enter the ancestral hall together and enjoy the worship of their descendants. He didn't want a concubine mother with the title of half-slave. He, Shi Fengju, didn't lack slaves, and the Shi family didn't lack slaves either. Big cousin. Feng Shi Fengju sighed and said softly, I don't know if you believe me or not, but I've never touched Sangwan. I promised to divorce her in a year and have nothing to do with her. If you are willing to wait for the 3 years of mourning to be over, I can really marry you. Gu Fengzi was stunned. She stared blankly at Shi Fengju as if she had seen a ghost. Just as Shi Fengju finished speaking, he secretly regretted it. How could he say that out loud? If this matter were to spread, who knows what kind of gossip would spread? How would Sangwan be able to face herself? Where would the Shi family's face go? What? What did you say? Gu Fengzi's eyes were still fixed on her, and the stunned expression on her face did not change. She couldn't be blamed for this, but this news was too shocking for her. How was this possible? Shi Fengju coughed awkwardly and avoided her gaze. He said awkwardly, well, it's nothing. It's up to you to believe it or not. If Gu Fengzi truly understood Shi Fengju, she would know from his expression that he was telling the truth. However, her mind was filled with thoughts of her future. How could she have the heart to think about anything else? Seeing Shi Fengju evading her question and not willing to face it directly, Gu Fengzi immediately thought that he was guilty. Guilty because he was lying to her. Gu Fengzi could not help but feel annoyed. In order to delay this matter, he even said such unreliable words. A man's heart was indeed fickle. Gu Fengzi regretted it. Why was she so reserved in the beginning? She should have done it with Sangwan before she married into the family. Big cousin, I'm serious. Everything I said is the truth. Gu Fengzi made a solemn vow with tears in her eyes. I swear, I really only want to be by your side. I'm willing to be a concubine. I won't fight with cousin sister-in-law for anything. I really won't. Fengzi, are these your heartfelt words? Shi Fengju's voice was as weak as his body. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. This was the woman he liked and admired for so many years. This was the woman he yearned to grow old with. Originally, she only wanted to be a concubine. He did not feel that she was great. He only felt a deep disappointment. Yes, these are my heartfelt words. I can swear. Gu Fengzi quickly nodded. All right. Shi Fengju glanced at her and nodded. I understand. Then you agree? Gu Fengzi's eyes lit up. Shi Fengju nodded lightly. From this moment onwards, she was only his concubine. Nothing more. Gu Fengzi smiled happily. She held onto Shi Fengju's arm and said, Big cousin, I knew you wouldn't ignore me and not want me. Big cousin. Shi Fengju tilted his head and looked at her. His eyes and heart were calm. The feeling of his heart pounding had completely disappeared. The next day, Shi Fengju returned to the Shi family. Gu Fengzi personally sent him off and said reluctantly, Big cousin, don't forget your promise. Shi Fengju thought to himself, I've never forgotten my promise. However, you've never believed it either. All right. He smiled faintly and turned to leave. The Shi family's front door was right in front of him. Shi Fengju rubbed his head and shook his head as he walked in. Wang was very dissatisfied with her son's behavior of going to Gu Fengzi's place first. Seeing him come back, her face was still full of anger. She turned her face away and refused to speak to him. Shi Fengju could only coax her for a while before she became happy again. How is Fengzi now? In the end, Wang sighed and asked. Although she was annoyed with her son, she was still more concerned about Gu Fengzi. Shi Fengju briefly explained the situation there. It wasn't much different from what Wang had imagined. She sighed and left it at that. It's good that you're back. Quickly go back and see Wan Yang. Have a good rest. You've been busy for so many days. You must be tired, Wang said. Mother, I have something to ask you, Shi Fengju said. You wrote me a letter saying that on the 6th of August. Pretend I didn't say anything. Wang hurriedly waved her hand. Of course not. We'll talk about it after Fengzi's mourning period. Wang hated it when people brought up this matter. Even if it was her son who brought it up, she still felt very uncomfortable. No, Shifengju said. Let's do it as usual. On the 6th of August, we'll bring Fangzi into the family. What? Wang's eyes widened in shock. You said we'll bring her into the family on the 6th of August? That means Fangzi isn't young anymore. 3 years. Shifengju's lips curled up and said half-jokingly, that's too long. She can't afford to wait. Wang was speechless for a moment and said, since you've said so, I'm sure Fangzi has the same idea. Fine. Then let's bring her into the family before the 100-day mourning period. It's good to bring her into the family earlier. But let's make things clear first. We can only consummate after 3 years. This rule can't be broken. After all, the one who died was her father. I know. Shifengju nodded. As for Wan Yang, you can talk to her yourself. Wang felt a little bored. She thought to herself, how did this matter end up like this? It's really making me feel uncomfortable. Shifengju's heart tightened and he could only nod. As for the other matters, I'll have to ask Mother to make arrangements. As they were talking, Mama Li heard that Shifengju had returned and rushed over. Wang saw her and smiled. This matter is Mama Li's responsibility. You can just ask her. Shifengju smiled. After greeting Mama Li, he told her about the matter. Mama Li was stunned at first, then she couldn't help but curse inwardly. This woman's conscience must have been eaten by a dog. Her father just died and she can't wait to get married. She's not afraid of such a tough life. But what if she gets in the way of eldest young master? Mama Li couldn't help but feel vexed that she didn't tell Wang everything. Now that Wang had agreed and eldest young master had such an attitude, she could only swallow her words. Fortunately, they can only consummate after 3 years. Since she's marrying into the family during the mourning period and as a concubine, I don't think there's anything to be particular about. There's no need for a banquet. When the day comes, a small sedan chair can be brought in from the side door. If it's too high profile, people will gossip instead. Nanny Li said. She could not wait to take advantage of the dark and windy night to quietly bring Gu Fangzi into Peony Park. From then on, Gu Fangzi would be locked up in Peony Park and never step out. There's also Peony Park. I'm afraid it'll have to be reorganized. Many things from before are no longer suitable. After all, there are many rules and taboos for people who are mourning. The dead are the most important. We can't disrespect them, and we can't be particular about them. If we anger the gods, it won't be easy to handle. Wang couldn't help but put her palms together and said, Old sister, you're still the most considerate. I know you're the most dependable. We'll do as you say. Also, do you want to specially prepare a room for Gu Jin's memorial tablet, so that Gu Fangzi can burn incense in the morning and evening? Right. Definitely. Mama Li nodded and said, Old slave, I'll get someone to prepare a room in Peony Park. Once Miss Gu marries into the family, it won't affect her filial piety. Mama Li's Miss Gu reminded Wang and Wang said, Yes. Since we haven't consummated our marriage, when Fangzi comes, we'll call her Miss Gu. Missy's words are very true. That's how it should be. Mama Li's smile deepened. The two of them, master and servant, spoke one after another. Every word was clear and logical, and Shifengju simply had no place to interrupt. Moreover, he didn't know what else to say. She had already given up, hadn't she? After the discussion was settled, everyone went their separate ways. Nanny Li called for the servants to go straight to Peony Park. Shifengju, on the other hand, went back to Ning Garden hesitantly. At this moment, Sangwon was completely unaware of the matter. Her mood was very calm. Eldest young master is back. Hearing the servant's report, Sangwon personally went out to welcome Shifengju. She smiled and welcomed him into the house, while instructing the servant to prepare water and tea. Shifengju's heart relaxed, and he couldn't help but raise his eyes to look at her. The woman in front of him had a simple hairpin, and wore a light yellow embroidered orchid cloak with narrow sleeves, and an ivory white dress. Her figure was slender and graceful, and her actions were elegant. Her eyes shone brightly, and her smile was shallow. There was an indescribable tranquility and naturalness about her. And you've worked hard at home. Shifengju smiled and nodded. Sangwon glanced at him and said with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Look at what eldest young master is saying. There's a saying that 1,000 days at home are good, but a day out is difficult. What's so hard about me? On the other hand, eldest young master has worked hard, running back and forth without feeling tired. Eldest young master seems to be in good spirits." Chapter 65. Shifengju was stunned and couldn't help but stare at her deeply, only to see that her expression remained indifferent as usual. He couldn't help but laugh at himself for thinking too much. What was he thinking? She had no choice but to stay in the Sure household, and had long planned to leave. Why did he feel that her words carried a tinge of jealousy? It wasn't that she was jealous, but that he had taken the wrong medicine. After washing his hands, face and changing his clothes, Shifengju gestured for everyone to leave with a glance when the maidservants served tea. Sangwon's handkerchief tightened. She knew what he was going to say. Wasn't this the same thing that had been causing a ruckus in the household these past few days? Wanyang. Shifengju only realized the difficulty of the words when he was about to say them. After mulling over it for a while, he finally managed to call out Sangwon's name, but the rest of his words were suddenly cut off. Sangwon raised her eyes and quietly stared at him. Her fair and delicate face glowed with a healthy glow, as beautiful as an orchid. He wasn't in a hurry, and neither was she. Regarding Fengzi's matter, Shifengju sighed. He didn't need to say anything more. Sangwon nodded and then shook her head. She smiled faintly and said, "I know, this matter was decided by Mother. It has nothing to do with you, so I don't blame you. I just want to know you. What kind of idea was this?" Shifengju's heart sank slightly. He knew that she was reminding him of what he had promised her, the promise between them. He felt even more apologetic. Sangwon saw his conflicted look and couldn't help but giggle. She smiled and said, "You don't need to feel guilty about this matter, really. This had nothing to do with you in the first place. Young master is a man of his words, and I believe that you wouldn't lie to a little girl like me. Besides, isn't this matter in the past now? You should have known when you met Mother. I'm afraid that this matter can only be discussed after Miss Gu's mourning period. This way, it doesn't conflict with our agreement. I'm also grateful that you've saved me and the Sang family's face." It was clear that everything was the will of the heavens. Sangwon did not dare to say it out loud, but she secretly added a sentence in her heart. Wanyang. Upon hearing these words, Shifengju felt even more guilty. His tongue felt heavier and heavier. He hated himself for being like this. He was clearly not an indecisive person. Otherwise, he would not have been able to control such a huge business like the Sure family. But in the face of her gentle smile and tranquil expression, he felt that he couldn't bear it. There was even a faint trace of unwillingness. What should be said still had to be said. It would happen sooner or later. Shifengju hardened his heart. With a single sentence, he had ruthlessly shattered Sangwon's elegance and restraint, as well as her indifference, her self-esteem, and her face. Wanyang, Fengzi will still be marrying into the family on the 6th day of the 8th month. This matter will not change. The smile froze on her face, and the bright starlight in her eyes suddenly dimmed. Sangwon felt as if her heart had been hammered. Her ears were ringing, and her mind was blank. The people in front of him also became blurry. She felt a wave of dizziness. What did you say?" Sangwon asked with difficulty. This is marrying into the family on the 100th day of mourning. Is this your idea, or Mother's idea?" Sangwon tried her best to maintain the last trace of modesty as she asked. To her, there was a difference. However, she was completely disappointed. Although Shifengju's voice was soft, she heard every word clearly. He said, "This is my idea." You can't wait. Sangwon's palms were tightly clenched. She tried her best to control her anger and unwillingness. So what if she was unwilling? She had long known that although there was an agreement between them, both sides of the agreement were never equal. The so-called fairness was completely based on his character and conduct. If he was willing to abide by it, then the agreement was valid. If he wanted to break it, then he would break it. What could she do? Shifengju, You really disappoint me. I've always been too naive. Wanyang, I'm sorry. When Shi Fengju saw her suddenly pale face and the expression she was trying her best to hold back, he felt extremely uncomfortable. Especially when she was smiling so gently just a moment ago and had so much faith in him. However, he had destroyed that trust in him. Shi Fengju suddenly felt a bitter and inexplicable sense of absurdity and irony. He had hoped so much that Gu Fangzi would trust him, but he knew that she had never done so. On the other hand, the person in front of him had never doubted him, but he had cruelly let her down. Fangzi is not young anymore, she can't wait any longer, Shi Fengju said leisurely. But don't worry, if someone bullies you or gives you a hard time, I'll stand up for you. Wanyang, in this household, I won't let you suffer. Sangwon's heart was bitter, but more than that, she felt embarrassed and humiliated. She always thought that he was different, but now she knew that she had always been wrong. Can I still believe in you? Sangwon did not ask. She had already given herself the answer in her heart. What if she's the one who wronged me? Sangwon did not know why, but she asked herself this question. Shi Fengju was startled, but after a moment he said seriously, she won't. Even if it's her, she won't. Sangwon pretended that she did not hear anything and smiled. Congratulations, young master. Young master's wish for so many years has finally been fulfilled. It's really worth celebrating. Shi Fengju smiled bitterly. He had never heard her speak in such a sarcastic tone, but at this moment, his heart only felt more guilty and apologetic. She's just entering the door, everything will be the same as before. Shi Fengju could not help but explain. Sangwon, however, had no interest in listening any further. She stood up and smiled. I've already arranged for the luggage that young master brought back to be placed in the study room. Nanny Li was the one who personally brought those boxes in. We don't know what those things are, so we didn't dare to touch them. Young master can bring some people to clean them up later. Oh right, what would young master like to eat tonight? If there is, tell me and I'll instruct the kitchen to prepare it early. If there isn't, how about we follow young master's usual preferences? The eldest young master must be tired now, so go and rest. I'm afraid there's still something going on outside. Xingji, that lass, has been looking over here a few times. Shi Fengju was stunned. He could not help but think. Could it be that changing faces is a woman's innate ability? Fangzi had changed into someone he could not recognize, and Wanyang had also changed into someone he could not recognize. Oh then I'll leave you to it. I'll go to the study room. You can prepare dinner as you see fit. As long as you like it, I don't mind. At this moment, Sangwon was exuding an aura that Shi Fengju had never seen before. Although he had never seen it before, his sharp intuition as a businessman told him that it was best not to provoke her, and to avoid her. Okay, I understand. Sangwon said lightly. Shi Fengju forced a smile and retreated in a sorry state. During dinner, Shi Fengju knew that he should return to Ning Garden early to accompany Sangwon. However, he did not have the courage to go back. He subconsciously felt that he did not dare to face her. In the end, he could only say that he had something to do and eat in the study room. Sangwon did not have to wait for him. Sangwon was more than happy to hear that. She immediately ordered the kitchen to send the dishes she had prepared for him to the study room. She then took her time to enjoy her meal. After dinner, Shi Fengju sent a servant to deliver a set of the latest travel books published in the capital. He said that he had specially bought it for Sangwon. Sangwon thanked him, and ordered the servant to take it. However, she was not in the mood to read it. She only ordered him to put it away and read it when he had time. The atmosphere in Ning Garden suddenly became very strange. No one could tell what was strange about it, but they could not put their finger on it. That was because everyone was too normal. Especially the eldest young master and the eldest young mistress. They were so abnormal that people could not help but feel nervous. Eldest young mistress, it seems that the eldest young master still has you in his heart. Mama Li advised with a smile. Look, the eldest young master cares about everything that you like. The eldest young master has just returned. Eldest young mistress, you should be more concerned about the eldest young master. Why don't you send these grapes to the study room? You can accompany the eldest young master and talk to him. These are fresh grapes that were brought in from the farmstead today. They're still fresh. Mama, ask Luya or Xingji to go. Why don't you make a trip there too? I'm a bit tired today and want to sleep early. In the past, Sangwon would never go against Mama Li's wishes. Even if she coaxed and tempted Wang, she would still listen to Mama Li. However, today, she suddenly felt dispirited. It was as if the things that she thought were important and valued in the past were not that important anymore. Mama Li was startled and secretly sighed. She gave a look to dismiss everyone. Not only was she not angry, she even felt a bit of pity. In her opinion, the eldest young mistress was good at everything. She could not find fault with anything and could be said to be perfect. However, because she was too perfect, she lacked the spark that a human should have. Without the spark, was she still a human? She was like the cold clay bodhisattva in the temple. At this time, her slightly angry expression was even more amiable and adorable than usual. If Sangwon knew of Mama Li's evaluation of her, what kind of expression would Sangwon have? Eldest young mistress, Mama Li smiled as she personally poured a cup of hot tea and handed it to her. She smiled and advised, "Old slave knows that you're unhappy, but it's not necessarily a bad thing if you don't look at it this way." Sangwon found her words funny and asked half-jokingly, "Oh, then how does Mama think it's a good thing?" Mama Li smiled and said, "Just think about it. She's anxious to marry into the family now, so she'll be even worse than before. You'll know that it's definitely not a bad thing." As Mama Li spoke, she recounted what she had said to Wang and the various orders she had given at Peony Park. She sneered and said, "Old slave knows exactly what that little vixen is thinking. In the end, isn't she just afraid that the eldest young master who has been mourning at home for 3 years won't want her? That's why she's anxious to marry into the family. Eldest young mistress, just wait and see. There's a lot of taboos for women who are in mourning. When she comes, just wait and see how old slave will deal with her. After 3 years of discipline, she'll be well behaved and be reborn. She won't be able to jump around anymore." Sangwon didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She and Mama Li simply couldn't get along. That wasn't what she was thinking, but she couldn't say it to Mama Li. However, after hearing Mama Li's words, why did her gloomy mood suddenly improve? Chapter 66. Nanny, Sangwon sighed with a smile. "I know you are good to me and Wanyang is extremely grateful. You may say that, but when the time comes, we still have to consider eldest young master's thoughts. If Miss Biao complains, or if she acts coquettishly in front of mother, those who don't know will think that we're taking advantage of our position to bully and humiliate other people's orphans." These words were exactly what Mammy Li liked to hear. Mammy Li felt relieved and couldn't help beaming with joy. She said with relief, "Otherwise, the legal wife is the legal wife, and the concubine is the concubine. It is truly destined from the heavens. Young mistress, how can a concubine compare to your breadth of mind? Look, the old slave hasn't done anything yet, and you are already saying this." Sangwon was stunned and she was also stunned. "I just want to live the rest of my life peacefully, and don't want him to look down on me. I, Sangwon, am an upright person, and am not the type to take my anger out on others." Young mistress, seeing that Sangwon was silent, Mama Li sighed again. "Listen to Nanny's advice and don't tire yourself. Ah, young master's heart is definitely with you. At this time, you can't turn his heart cold. To put it bluntly, he was brought up by the old slave and the old slave knows his temperament better than him. That little vixen is definitely not a good match for him. Only you are worthy of the position of young mistress. In the end, isn't she just trying to make me take the initiative to curry favor with him, and make him feel even more guilty while he is feeling guilty?" Sangwon secretly shook her head. Not to mention whether it would be useful or not. She disdained to do such a thing. "Nanny," Sangwon knew that she would not be able to persuade Nanny Li on this matter, so she said with a bitter face, "I'm really tired today, so I won't be going." Her heart skipped a beat and she said coquettishly, "Nanny, why don't you go? Young master might also want to see you and talk to you. I don't have much energy right now, and my complexion isn't good either. I can't let young master see me and affect his mood. Nanny, what do you think?" "Young mistress, you're really..." Mama Lee didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh. Thinking about it, she felt comfortable and nodded with a smile. Fine. The old slave would make a trip there. Young mistress, since you're tired, you should rest earlier. Sangwon had the same idea. She smiled and said gratefully, Good. Granny, you can go now. As soon as Mama Lee left, Sangwon washed up and went to bed. She was in a really bad mood and didn't want to meet Shifengju. By the time Shifengju returned to Ning Garden from the study, Sangwon had already gone to bed. After hearing what the servant girls said, Shifengju secretly let out a sigh of relief. He also washed up and entered the room. As usual, he gently took out the bedding that he hadn't used for a long time from the cabinet and carefully spread it on the ground. He looked at the tightly closed bed curtain and gently lay down. From the moment he entered, Sangwon could feel it. Subconsciously, she controlled her breathing and laid quietly. When everything returned to silence, she gently opened her eyes. She couldn't see anything clearly in the darkness, just like her current mood. The next morning, when Sangwon woke up, Shifengju had already left. Sangwon didn't say anything and just washed up and ate breakfast as usual. Young mistress, the old slave has already given instructions to the peony park. Does young mistress want to go over and see if it's appropriate? Is there anything that needs to be changed? Mama Lee asked after breakfast. Naturally, no one could find fault with Mama Lee's work. Sangwon understood what she meant. She was thinking for her. After she went over and took a few glances and nodded, this matter would be considered as her arrangement. In front of Wang, she would appear magnanimous and hands-on. All right. When the other mothers and sisters-in-law come and report the matter, we'll go over and take a look. Sangwon didn't want to brush away Mama Lee's good intentions, so she smiled and nodded. Yes, young mistress. Mama Lee agreed with satisfaction when she saw that she understood her painstaking efforts. After dealing with the general affairs, Sangwon, accompanied by Mama Lee, Luya, and Xingji, went to Peony Park. She saw that the brightly colored potted flowers that had been placed at the entrance of the courtyard had all been moved away. Even the two large blue and white porcelain jars that had been planted with pomegranates had been moved away. They were replaced by a potted cypress that was as tall as a person. The dense dark green branches and leaves looked dignified. The red lanterns hanging on the eaves had also been replaced with plain colors. There were no decorations at all. When they entered the room, it was as cold and cheerless as a snow cave. The sun was shining brightly outside, but Sangwon couldn't help but shiver and feel a chill. Isn't it a bit too plain? Sangwon couldn't help but say, It's not plain. This is still considered good. Mama Lee said decisively. They are truly in mourning. There aren't any decorations at all. Look, the old slave didn't even ask to put away the plain porcelain vase. The curtains weren't changed to white either. The plain old slave felt that this plain blue vase was very good. It's light and refreshing. It suits Miss Biao's current status and mood. Mama Lee's reasonable words made Sangwon gasp in amazement. She felt more and more that she had lived her previous life in vain. There were thousands of rules in this world. If the main wife wanted to punish a concubine, there would be thousands of reasons. How could she be so useless and be punished so miserably by Gu Fangzi? Are the bedding and cushions thick enough? Morning is morning, but don't let Miss Biao catch a cold. Sangwon said lightly. Discipline was discipline, but she couldn't let others have a reason to criticize her. Young mistress, don't worry, Mama Lee said with a confident smile. Everything is of the highest quality. Miss Biao's body is delicate. How can we let her suffer? Sangwon smiled and nodded. She knew that she had worried for nothing. How could Mama Lee let others have a reason to hold her back? Don't prepare the clothes first. When Miss Biao comes, let her choose the material and then make it. Maybe she became thinner because she was sad and the measurements were wrong. Sangwon said again. Mama Lee was stunned. In her opinion, they should make plain coarse clothes for Gu Fangzi. But since Sangwon had already ordered it, she couldn't refute and could only agree. The side room for old Master Gu's memorial tablet has also been prepared. Young mistress, do you want to take a look? Mama Lee said again. Sangwon obeyed and almost couldn't wait to leave the cold and cheerless room. She went to the west side room and casually looked outside. She saw that the four walls were empty. There was only a long table in the middle with an incense burner on the table and a thick round cushion on the ground. She nodded and left. It will be the 6th day of the new year in a few days. Mama, keep an eye on it. Make sure that everything is prepared before then. Seeing that the festival is coming, I have to be busy preparing. Sangwon said with a smile. Young mistress, don't worry. The old slave knows. Mama Lee was energized. Oh right, Sangwon thought for a while and asked again. Miss Biao is part of our family now that she has married into our family. Is there any taboo to pay attention to during the Mid-Autumn Festival? Mama Lee snorted in disdain and said with a smile. Old mistress loves a lively atmosphere. Young mistress can prepare as lively as possible. The Gu family's matters have nothing to do with our Shi family. Young mistress, don't worry. Then I know. Sangwon smiled. Asking this in front of everyone was just to prevent Gu Fangzi from making a fuss about it in the future. Back in Ning Garden, Luya helped Sangwon change her clothes. She couldn't help but stick out her tongue and sigh. Miss Biao is such a smart person. I really don't know why she would rather be a concubine. Old mistress likes her so much. Wouldn't it be great if she could be the official wife outside? Being a concubine and entering the family like this, it's really... young mistress, this servant doesn't mean anything else. Luya suddenly remembered that Gu Fangzi was a concubine under Sangwon and couldn't help but stick out her tongue. Sangwon smiled. You're right. I also don't know what she's thinking. Luya shook her head and smiled. If it were me, even if I fell into the pit of riches and honor, I wouldn't be able to continue living like this. With someone holding her down from above, the word rules was enough to make her unable to move. Sangwon was angry and amused at the same time. She scolded her. Shameless lass. What nonsense are you spouting here? Hurry up, I still have matters to attend to. How can you spout such nonsense? If others hear this, they won't laugh at you for being so shameless. Luya quickly smiled and said, This servant is just saying a few words in front of young mistress. This servant's mouth is very tight. The housekeepers and stewards of the Shi family were all familiar with their duties. They had held countless New Year's festivals, so Sangwon didn't have to worry too much. At most, she invited Wang's personal servant, Nanny Jiang, to discuss with her what dishes to prepare and which troupe to book to make Wang happy. Then, she would send someone to inform the second branch. The day passed quickly. At dinner time, Sangwon was again alone. Chang Huan came over to report that young master had a dinner party with a few friends in Qingzhou, so she made up for it. Sangwon didn't say anything and faintly replied, Understood. Seeing that Mama Lee was glaring at her from the side, she could only add a few more words. Serve him carefully. And don't let young master drink too much wine. Hearing Sangwon's instructions, Mama Lee was gratified, and Chang Huan also loudly agreed. However, when Shi Fengju came back, he was dead drunk and unconscious. Sangwon was speechless. She couldn't help but think to herself, Young master won't be happy if he doesn't oppose me, right? Mama Lee was very distressed. She hurriedly ordered the servants to bring water to wipe his face, and personally went to cook some hangover soup. The servants in the room were busy for a while before they finished. Seeing that Shi Fengju's face was slightly red and his eyes were heavy, Sangwon could only order the servants to help him to the large bed in the bedroom. She really didn't like the smell of alcohol on his body, so she simply ordered Luya and Hongyi. Tidy up the east wing room and lay out the bedding. I'll sleep there tonight. You guys keep watch outside and serve me well. Luya and the others agreed, and were just about to leave when the sleeping Shi Fengju murmured in a low voice, Wanyang! Wanyang! Sangwon suddenly froze. Luya and the others also looked at her. Young mistress, young master is calling for you. Mama Lee couldn't help but remind her when she saw her standing still in a daze. Sangwon came back to her senses. She could only go forward and sit on the edge of the bed with difficulty. She gently pushed Shi Fengju and said, Young master, you. Before she could finish her sentence, Shi Fengju suddenly raised his hand and held her hand tightly. He said vaguely, Wanyang, Wanyang, I'm sorry. Don't be angry. Don't go. Chapter 67. Sangwon's body stiffened and her heart skipped a beat. She stared at him in a daze. "Young mistress, you should stay. Young master misses you." Mama Lee hurriedly said with a smile and winked at Luya to stop her. Sangwon subconsciously tugged at the hand he was holding, but she didn't expect that the drunken man was surprisingly strong. She didn't dare to use too much force in front of everyone, so she had to give up and reluctantly nodded. "You can leave. I'll be fine here." Mama Lee couldn't wait to hear that. She happily let everyone out and gently closed the door. Sangwon let out a silent sigh and relaxed her body. Without hiding anything, she looked at Shi Fengju's facial features. "Wan Yang, Wan Yang." Shi Fengju's eyes were half closed and he began to call her name again. "I'm here." Sangwon gently patted the brocade quilt with her other hand. "Are you okay? It's late. I have to sleep," she said as she tried to pull her hand away. Unexpectedly, Shi Fengju's hand was as tight as an iron hoop. Sangwon couldn't break free no matter how hard she tried. She was a little mad, so she tried to pry off Shi Fengju's hand one by one. Perhaps because of the pain, Shi Fengju finally let go. Sangwon rubbed her red wrist and breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, Shi Fengju held her wrist tightly again and suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at her and said slowly, "Wan Yang, don't be angry." "I'm sorry." "I'm not angry." Sangwon held back her anger and said, "Let go of me." "Really?" Shi Fengju's drunken eyes lit up. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly, and his handsome face showed a happy smile. "Wan Yang is not angry. If you don't let go, I can't say for sure." "Ah. What are you doing?" Sangwon was flustered and exasperated. She forcefully suppressed her exclamation and let out a low shout. However, Shi Fengju forcefully pulled her down and she couldn't help but fall onto the bed. In her dizziness, she was heavily pressed down by Shi Fengju. "Shi Fengju, get up, get up." Half of his body was on top of hers, and his head was resting on her neck. His breath reeking of alcohol was hot and cold on her neck. Sangwon was so flustered that she was about to jump out. Her face and ears were red. "Shi Fengju, Shi Fengju." Sangwon gritted her teeth and pushed him away with all her might. He had already closed his eyes and fallen into a deep sleep. He mumbled something and let go of her. In the next second he changed his position and hugged her even tighter, holding her firmly in his arms. Sangwon was embarrassed and angry. Her face and ears were red as she struggled for a while. She was so tired that she was panting, but she found that her efforts were in vain. She panted weakly and couldn't help but tilt her head to look at the handsome face that was so close to her. He was so close that if she tilted her head, she would touch his face. She could even hear his heartbeat. But was he really so close to her? Where would he be in the next second? Sangwon closed her eyes and didn't think about it anymore. She fell asleep in a daze. The sky was already bright, and the bedroom became brighter. Shi Fengju gently opened his eyes and shook his head, which was still a little groggy. He suddenly fell into a muddled state, and didn't know where he was. He couldn't be blamed. This big bed had never belonged to him. He was really confused. His gaze slowly shifted and came face to face with a snow-white face and a pair of resentful eyes. Shi Fengju was jolted awake, and only then did he realize that he was actually on top of Sangwon. His head was buried in her neck, and his arms were tightly hugging her. "Ah!" Shi Fengju's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly let go of her and sat up. He was at a loss and panicked. He patted his forehead in annoyance and said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wan Yang." Sangwon closed her eyes tiredly. Her palm-sized face was pale with tear stains. She weakly pulled the brocade quilt and covered herself. She tilted her head and said softly, "You can go out. I want to lie down for a while." "Wan Yang." Shi Fengju moved his lips and nodded sullenly. "Then I'll go out first. You rest." Getting off the bed, Shi Fengju couldn't help but look back at Sangwon. His mood was very complicated. Regret was certain, but there was also an indescribable sweetness and a strong heartache for no reason. What did he do? He clearly had a contract with her. How could he take advantage of her so shamelessly? This was bad. In her heart, how was he different from a scoundrel? When he thought about how she would view him, and how he was such a person in her heart. Shi Fengju felt a deep sense of dejection. He smiled bitterly, put on his clothes hastily, and opened the door to go out. Last night he was dead drunk. Although he woke up late today, the maidservants did not mind. However, when they saw that the drunk eldest young master had woken up while the eldest young mistress, who did not drink, was still sleeping, the maidservants' eyes were more or less filled with confusion. Shi Fengju felt a little guilty. He coughed awkwardly and said, "Young mistress is tired. Don't disturb her. Let her sleep a little longer." The maids suddenly understood and hurriedly responded with a soft yes. They helped Shi Fengju wash up and didn't mention it again. Mama Li inevitably nagged and complained that he didn't cherish his body and drank so much wine. Shi Fengju patiently promised that he wouldn't do it again next time. Only then did Mama Li stop. She asked him with concern if he was feeling unwell. Was his head still dizzy? Did it hurt? Shi Fengju hurriedly smiled and said he was fine. Mama Li was still worried. She ordered someone to bring the hangover soup and forced Shi Fengju to drink it. Does young master want to eat breakfast first, or wait for young mistress to eat together? Xingji asked. Shi Fengju couldn't help but glance in the direction of the bedroom. When he thought of Sangwon, his feelings became complicated again. He waved his hand and said, "Bring it up first. For young mistress." When the words came to his mouth, he realized that he didn't know what she liked to eat or what her tastes were like. When he thought of the dishes she carefully prepared for him every time, Shi Fengju felt even worse. Tell the kitchen to make whatever young mistress likes to eat. That's right, stew a bowl of good quality bird's nest, and bring it to her when she wakes up. Everyone was stunned. Since when did young master start to care about such trivial matters? The moment of silence made the sensitive Shi Fengju feel very awkward. He coughed heavily in an unnatural manner. Everyone seemed to wake up from a dream. Mama Li immediately pulled a long face and scolded. "What are you all standing there for? Didn't you hear what young master said? Hurry up and leave." Yes. Everyone hurriedly dispersed. Shi Fengju absent-mindedly ate breakfast. It tasted like chewing wax and he couldn't taste anything. "Young master, do you have a bad appetite? Is it because the food I made this morning wasn't to your liking?" Mama Li asked with concern. Shi Fengju hurriedly smiled and said, "No, I am done." "But young master, you only use so little." Mama Li's heart ached. She said without any doubt, "It must be because you drank too much last night that you lost your appetite. Hongyi, bring another bowl of hangover soup." Upon hearing this, Shi Fengju felt dizzy. The hangover soup really didn't taste good. She forced him to drink bowl after bowl. When did his wet nurse become so uncaring towards him? No need, no need. Shi Fengju hurriedly stood up and said, "I'll go take a look at Wan Yang. I'll have an appetite in a while." Mama Li originally wanted to persuade him, but after hearing his words, she gave up. She nodded and smiled. "You were so drunk last night. Young mistress must be exhausted after taking care of you all night. It's good that you spend more time with her." Shi Fengju smiled and nodded. He turned around and went back into the bedroom. Sangwon was still lying on her side. When she heard the noise, she raised her eyebrows slightly and called out softly, "Luya?" "It's me." Shi Fengju walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Sangwon's body stiffened, but she didn't turn around. "Young master, is there anything else?" "Yes," Shi Fengju said seriously. "I do have something to tell you." Sangwon's lips moved slightly. She said indifferently, "Then say it." Shi Fengju repeated the words that had been hovering in his heart a few times. Finally, he gathered his courage and said, "Wan Yang, I'll take responsibility for what happened last night." "What?" Sangwon immediately sat up. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. "What did you say?" "I said, I'll take responsibility for you, Wan Yang." Shi Fengju felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off his shoulders. No matter what, he was in the wrong last night. Since he had taken advantage of her, he couldn't avoid it. He couldn't let her suffer. "Don't mention our previous agreement again. You'll always be Shi Fengju's legal wife. This time, I won't go back on my word," Shi Fengju said quickly. After he finished speaking, he felt a wave of relief in his heart. It was as if a huge rock that had been pressing down on his heart for a long time had been removed. No. Sangwon's eyes were cold. She lowered her eyes and said indifferently, I don't understand what young master is talking about. What responsibility? What responsibility do you want to take? What does this have to do with Wan Yang? Wan Yang, I know I was drunk last night. I shouldn't have. You were drunk last night. Sangwon interrupted him and said word by word. You were drunk last night and then fell asleep. That's all. She should be happy, shouldn't she? Hearing him say this, she didn't have to worry about the future anymore. She also didn't have to worry about the Sang family being gossiped about. However, she didn't want to. She still didn't want to. She didn't want to live her life again. She didn't want to be so conflicted and in so much pain. What was the use of his words, no matter how pleasant they sounded? She believed in him, but Gu Fangzi had a way to make him go against his will. As long as Gu Fangzi was here, as long as Gu Fangzi was in this family, she would never have peace. She didn't want to fight with her for the rest of her life. That was too tiring. Why bother? You're still angry at me, aren't you? Shi Fengjiu became agitated. He couldn't help but put his hands on her shoulders. Wan Yang, I'm sorry. I apologize to you. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm not angry. Sangwon struggled to break free from his hands. I just hope that young master doesn't forget what you promised me. Don't make me look down on you. Shi Fengjiu's face immediately turned snow-white. No one had ever spoken to him like this before. No one. He looked at Sangwon's face in disbelief. He couldn't believe that those words had come out of her red, full lips. She would rather lie to herself than let him take responsibility. She only wanted to leave him. Shi Fengjiu's heart became sour and irritated. A feeling called jealousy was quietly growing in his heart. He didn't know what he was jealous of. He only knew that when he heard her say that she still wanted to leave, he felt an indescribable pain. As you wish. Shi Fengjiu gritted his teeth. His face was cold as he suddenly got up and left. However, he didn't know that behind him, 2 lines of tears were falling from Sangwon's eyes, gently sliding down her snow-white cheeks. Chapter 68. Shi Fengjiu didn't return even when it was dark. In a private room on the 3rd floor of the Jade Lotus House located in the commercial center of Qingzhou, Shi Fengjiu was drinking with a man wearing a royal blue robe embroidered with dark patterns on the jade wall. The man was tall, handsome, and full of spirit. He sat opposite Shi Fengjiu with a smile in his eyes. It was Zhuang Weixian. It was a sin. Their mothers didn't like each other and fought to the death, but they were good brothers who appreciated each other. This time, Shi Fengjiu went on a long journey. If Madame Zhuang didn't insist on Zhuang Weixian staying behind for a blind date, Zhuang Weixian would have gone with him as usual. What's wrong? Didn't you drink enough last night? You still want to drink? You weren't like this before. Are you happy that your long-cherished wish is about to be fulfilled? Zhuang Weixian laughed and slapped the table. It's true that people are in high spirits when they're in a good mood. A figure subconsciously flashed through his mind. That elegant and refined temperament, that indescribable firmness within that gentleness, and that intoxicating abacus with one hand. Such a gentle and elegant woman, who would have thought that her life would be so hard? She met a husband who already had someone in his heart, and was destined not to care about her for the rest of her life. Her life was almost foreseeable. She was destined to sit quietly in that gorgeous cage, savoring the passing of time until the flowers withered and her beauty faded. Good news. Shi Fengjiu's eyes were slightly tired and a little drunk. He laughed. What good news? Why? Did your mother arrange a marriage for you? Which family's girl is she from? What does it have to do with me? Zhuang Weixian was angry and amused. He rolled his eyes at him. Isn't your childhood sweetheart cousin about to marry into the family? Cousin? Feng? Shi Fengjiu was stunned. His lips curled into a mocking smile. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. Yes, she's about to get her wish. I think you are really drunk and very drunk, Zhuang Weixian said with absolute certainty. Or you are so happy that you are dizzy and talking nonsense. Shi Fengjiu just shook his head and smiled. He played with the jade cup in his hand, admiring the carved patterns of twining branches. Zhuang Weixian finally noticed that something was wrong and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Shi Fengju slowly put down the jade cup and looked at Zhuang Weixian seriously. "You're actually quite familiar with Fangzi. Tell me, what kind of person is she?" "What?" Shi Fengju waved his hand and said with a smile, "We're brothers. There's nothing to hide behind closed doors. Don't lie to me. Tell me, what kind of person do you think he is?" What could anyone say? Zhuang Weixian was still in a daze. Although they were brothers, it wasn't a gentleman's behavior to criticize his brother's woman in front of him. Only an idiot would do such a thing. Moreover, this guy was obviously drunk and didn't choose his words carefully. When he sobers up, Zhuang Weixian wouldn't even have a place to cry. Shi Fengju saw that Zhuang Weixian didn't say anything and chuckled before asking again. "If I asked you to marry her, would you?" "No." Zhuang Weixian was shocked and blurted out. That elegant figure subconsciously flashed through her mind, and she felt indignant. She stared at Shi Fengju and said, "Don't you already have a wife? Does your cousin want to be your second wife?" Shi Fengju smiled slightly and shook his head. "No. Why not? Fangzi is also a good person." Zhuang Weixian sighed and surrendered. He smiled bitterly. "She's not my type. Are you satisfied with this answer?" But in his heart he thought, "She clearly knows that you are engaged, yet she didn't avoid arousing suspicion and instead took the initiative to get close to you. This kind of woman has no sense of shame or morality, so what's there to like? With her personality, if she says she's willing to be a concubine, she can only lie to you. You can't see Mount Tai. When the time comes, you'll know what's good for you." Poor Miss Sang, damn it. Why am I thinking of her again? Zhuang Weixian secretly pinched his own palm. Shi Fengju knew that he couldn't force him to say anything else. He laughed at himself and said, "You're much better than me. At least you know what you want. Unlike me. But I don't have anything." Zhuang Weixian laughed at himself. "You have a beautiful wife and concubines. Let's not talk about this anymore." Shi Fengju smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought for a moment and said, If you suddenly found out that the person you've liked for many years is not the kind of person you like, what would you do?" "Simple. Then we'll just break up. We merchants don't have so many stupid rules," Zhuang Weixian said casually. Only after he said it did he realize that something was wrong. He couldn't help but look at him strangely. "I say, what's wrong with you today? You're not talking about yourself, are you? You and Miss Gu." Shi Fengju didn't say anything, which meant that he tacitly agreed with Zhuang Weixian's words. Zhuang Weixian smiled and said, "If that's the case, why do you still welcome her into the family? She's your cousin after all. Do you have the heart to let her suffer?" Shi Fengju shook his head. "If she insists, then I can't say anything." Thinking of Gu Fangzi's crying and aggressive attitude, Shi Fengju felt a wave of disgust. Although Zhuang Weixian was very curious, he knew that it wasn't appropriate to ask about this matter. He smiled and said, "Forget it. If she insists, then why are you still so conflicted? Just welcome her into the family and raise her. After all, you're sure family can afford to raise 100 more." "What nonsense are you talking about?" Shi Fengju glared at him, but there was a smile on his face. "That's right, just raise her. However, Wan Yang." Thinking of Sang-Wan who insisted on leaving, Shi Fengju's heart was in a mess. However, this matter couldn't be told to outsiders, not even to Zhuang Weixian. With a cup of pear blossom spring burning hot in his throat, Shi Fengju secretly made a decision. "I won't let her leave so easily." Shi Fengju returned drunk in the middle of the night. Fortunately, Zhuang Weixian managed to persuade him not to be so drunk last night. Although he was groggy, there was still a trace of clarity in his mind. Shi Fengju didn't want to disturb Sang-Wan, and ordered Chang Huan to help him back to the study. Chang Huan didn't dare to disobey. Seeing her master so drunk, she also didn't dare to ignore it. She hurriedly sent someone to report to Ning Garden. Sang-Wan had already fallen asleep at that time. Mama Li hurriedly brought someone to the study to take a look. She couldn't help but feel distressed. She hurriedly boiled a hangover soup and brought it over. She ordered Luya to stay in the study with a maid to serve her. By right, the matter should have ended there. However, when Wang found out about it the next day, she became unhappy. Her son had always done things with a sense of propriety. It was very rare for him to return home drunk. It was even more unprecedented for him to be drunk for 2 consecutive nights. Moreover, he went straight to the study to sleep the second night. Thinking of Gu Fengzi's marriage, Wang naturally thought of Sangwan. She believed that Sangwan was unhappy and quarreled with him. She made him feel annoyed and went out to drink. The more Wang thought about it, the angrier she became. The angrier she was, the more distressed she felt for her son. And the more distressed she felt for her son, the more annoyed she felt at Sangwan. Wasn't it just taking in a concubine? She had clearly promised, but who knew that she would torment her son behind his back? Saying one thing in public and another behind his back was simply outrageous. Thus, early in the morning, Wang called Sangwan over to reprimand her. "What did Fengju do last night?" Wang asked. Wang had always shown her emotions on her face. Although she tried her best to remain calm, Sangwan could still see her tense face and stiff tone. But she was also puzzled and did not know what was going on. She smiled and said, "He said he went out to eat with a friend." "Then when did he come back?" Wang held back her anger. Sangwan had a bad premonition. She lowered her eyes and shook her head. I was already asleep. I don't know. Young master rested in the study last night. I don't know." Wang slammed the table and said angrily, "He is your husband, not someone else. As his wife, how can you not care about your husband? Regardless of whether he is dead or alive outside, you went to sleep first? And you can even sleep. You even let him rest in the study? That study was cold and cheerless. There was no tea or water. Is that even a place to rest? How could the servants be so clumsy when it came to serving people? My poor son. Marrying a wife is like not marrying at all. There isn't even anyone who cares about him. If it wasn't for Mama Lee yesterday, think about it, he would have suffered a lot last night. If he were to catch a cold or fall sick, how would you feel?" The more Wang spoke, the more distress she felt and her face became uglier. "Mother, daughter-in-law knows her mistake. It's daughter-in-law's fault, please punish me." Sangwan was like a bolt from the blue. She hurriedly knelt in front of Wang. She finally understood that she really did not have the right to throw a tantrum and throw a tantrum. Could it be that he was too lenient with her, that his temper grew, causing him to be so muddle-headed? Sangwan secretly mocked herself. He was too lenient with her? Wang said angrily. After coming back for 2 days, he has been drinking outside for 2 consecutive nights. I didn't know when my son became so addicted to alcohol. Wan Yang, I know you are angry. Even if you don't say it out loud, you might think so in your heart. But you can't keep throwing a tantrum like this. Fengju has been working so hard outside for the past few months, but when he came back, you didn't serve him well, and even threw a tantrum to annoy him. How can a daughter-in-law be like you? You don't care about your husband at all." Sangwan was embarrassed and angry. Her mother-in-law's words were too serious and she could not accept it. Sangwan knew that if she tried to defend herself, her mother-in-law would be even angrier. But if she did not defend herself, it would be equivalent to admitting what she said, which would be disadvantageous to her. "Mother, Wan Yang doesn't dare. Wan Yang didn't throw a tantrum. Wan Yang really didn't. Wang was indeed even more annoyed. "I know my son best. If he wasn't annoyed, he wouldn't have gone out to drink like this. This daughter-in-law doesn't dare to interfere with my husband's matters. If he says it, then this daughter-in-law will listen. If he doesn't say it, then this daughter-in-law doesn't dare to ask. Whether he is annoyed or not, this daughter-in-law really doesn't know. He said that he went out to eat, so this daughter-in-law doesn't know the situation and doesn't know why he got so drunk. This is what mother taught me. This daughter-in-law will remember it from now on. In the future I will ask more." Wang was at a loss for words. Although she was angry at Sangwan for talking back, she calmed down a little and listened to her words. Sangwan saw that the situation had taken a turn for the better and quickly continued. "Mother, this daughter-in-law really has no objection to cousin Fengju marrying into the family. As the daughter-in-law of the Shi family, How can this daughter-in-law not have a bit of tolerance? Besides, this matter will happen sooner or later. What difference does it make if it happens earlier or later? If this daughter-in-law was angry about this, then this daughter-in-law would have already gotten over it. Why would this daughter-in-law wait until now? Wang was silent, but her expression slowly returned to normal. After a while she said, "Do you really think so?" Chapter 69. Sang-won hurriedly nodded. "Yes, mother. This daughter-in-law doesn't dare to lie to mother. To be honest, this daughter-in-law is in the wrong. I should have taken the initiative to care for my husband. Then this wouldn't have happened. In the future, when my husband goes out to socialize again, this daughter-in-law will definitely ask someone to find out. If he doesn't return by the end of the night, this daughter-in-law will ask someone to see what's going on. This daughter-in-law understands." Wang frowned slightly and hurriedly said, "There's no need for that. It's normal for a man to socialize outside. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for him to ask around? If he returns late in the future, you just have to wait. If he comes back drunk again, you have to persuade him." Mother is still thoughtful. This daughter-in-law understands. This daughter-in-law will remember this in her heart. There definitely won't be a next time. Sang-won flattered her while expressing her determination. Wang sighed and waved her hand. "Forget it. Get up. Don't kneel. It's good that you know. It's not that mother doesn't care about you, but think about it. Who do we rely on to live a luxurious life at home? Isn't it because of a man who works hard outside? What's wrong with sleeping a little late occasionally? Men work so hard outside, but when they return home, they can't relax. If there's no one to serve them attentively, what will they become? Don't tell me you don't care about your own man." Sang-won said, "If he's not my man, it's not my place to care about him." She hurriedly nodded and gently got up. She repeatedly expressed her determination to Wang. Wang's expression finally relaxed. Nanny Jiang watched coldly from the sidelines and couldn't help but secretly marvel. She couldn't tell that eldest young mistress wasn't simple. With just a few words, she managed to calm eldest young mistress's anger. As an experienced and trusted nanny, Nanny Jiang understood Wang's temperament better than Mama Lee. Wang loved to go down a dead end and let her imagination run wild. When she scolded someone, there was no reason for her to do so. Other than Gu Fangzi, Nanny Jiang had never seen anyone who could coax her with just a few words. Even Gu Fangzi would not let it go so easily. As soon as it ended, Shi Fengju also rushed over after receiving news from Mama Lee. Seeing that the atmosphere was not as tense as he had imagined, Shi Fengju secretly sighed in relief. He could not help but glance at Sang-won, then stepped forward to greet his mother with a smile. Wang's anger, which had just been extinguished, flared up again. She scolded Shi Fengju angrily and pitifully. Shi Fengju was very experienced in dealing with his own mother. In a short while he managed to make Wang happy again. "What's wrong with you? You're not a drinker. I've never been like this before. What's wrong? Hurry up and tell me." Wang finished her tantrum and began to interrogate him again. "It's nothing." Shi Fengju smiled casually and said, "It's just that we haven't seen each other for a long time, so we drank a little too much." "Liar." Wang snorted. "Didn't we have a gathering a few days ago? Why did we gather again yesterday?" Shi Fengju could only say, "A few days ago, it was a group of friends. Yesterday, it was just me and the young master of the Zhuang family. He was in a bad mood, so he dragged me to drink with him. After a while I drank a little too much." Shi Fengju pushed all the blame onto Zhuang Weixian. Upon hearing that he had been with the Zhuang family last night, Wang became even more unhappy. She could not help but snort. "Then there's no good person in the Zhuang family. And you still like to hang out with their young master? Humph, I don't think he has any good intentions. You just came home, but he called you out to drink as much as he could." "Mother." Shi Fengju could only smile vaguely and say, "Our families have business dealings." Afraid that his mother would continue to nag, Shi Fengju rubbed his forehead and inadvertently showed a bit of pain on his face. Wang saw this and felt distressed. She hurriedly said, "Does your head still hurt?" She could not help but scold Shifengju a few more times. Then she urged Shifengju to go back and rest. Shifengju complied and stood up. However, his eyes glanced at Sangwon. "Wan Yang, you should go back too. Hurry and help your husband," Wang said as expected. "Yes, mother." Sangwon stood up and gently supported Shifengju's arm. Shifengju felt a strange feeling in his heart. He could not help but turn to look at Sangwon. Seeing that her eyebrows were as light as a painting and that she was as calm as the wind, he felt a sense of loss. "Wait." Wang suddenly stopped him and asked Shifengju, "Even if you came back late last night, why didn't you go back to Ning Garden? Why did you go back to the cold and quiet study?" Seeing that her mother-in-law had brought up the past again, Sangwon suddenly felt like crying but had no tears. She clenched her fists. Shifengju chuckled and said somewhat embarrassedly, "Actually, I just wanted to rest in the study last night, and then go back to Ning Garden. Who would have thought that after resting, I couldn't get up?" "Really?" Wang looked at the two of them suspiciously. "You two didn't quarrel? How could that be?" Shifengju laughed. In order to prove to Wang, he raised his hand and gently put it on Sangwon's shoulder. He smiled and said, "Wan Yang has such a good temper. How could she quarrel with me? Besides, your son is not that kind of person. We're fine, aren't we, Wan Yang?" Sangwon reluctantly looked up at him and nodded with a smile. "Mother, we're really fine." "That's good." Wang was finally relieved. She said impatiently, "There have been too many things happening recently. It's making me very upset. Don't make more trouble for me." Shifengju and Sangwon hurriedly agreed. After leaving the main courtyard, Sangwon saw that Shifengju's arm was still on her shoulder. She paused and looked at him. Shifengju felt a little warm in his heart when he saw the angry expression on her face. He was afraid that he would annoy her again, and didn't dare to be rash. He smiled awkwardly and quickly withdrew his hand. "I'm sorry. I've implicated you. Mother doesn't mean what she says. In fact, she's very kind. Don't be angry." Sangwon was stunned and couldn't help but sigh. When did he start to speak to her so carefully? It seemed like he was being lenient. He had allowed her to become braver. After what happened just now, Sangwon knew that her unconscious behavior was very dangerous. If she wasn't careful, she would be reprimanded by her mother-in-law. She softened her expression and smiled. "Why would I be angry with mother? Besides, it was my fault last night." Shifengju was delighted. He quickly smiled and said, "I don't blame you. It was my own fault. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Let's go back to Ning Garden." Sangwon smiled and nodded. She followed him back. In the blink of an eye, it was the 6th of August. Because they were taking in a concubine and marrying into the family during the 100-day mourning period, they couldn't be any more low-key. All the banquets were dismissed and no one from the Sang family came. Fong couldn't help but grumble in dissatisfaction. However, when she thought about how Gu Fangzi still had 3 more years of mourning before she could consummate her marriage with Shifengju, she knew that Sangwon's child would be able to walk by then. Gu Fangzi wouldn't be able to threaten her. Only then did she calm down. Early in the morning, Gu Fangzi first boarded a carriage from the Gu family's courtyard. In the afternoon, she arrived outside Qingzhou City and boarded a small sedan chair. Seeing the small sedan chair that came to pick her up, it was simple and unadorned. Gu Fangzi was immediately dissatisfied. She then saw that only 2 servants and 2 servant girls from the Shi family were there to pick her up. They were also dressed in simple green and blue clothes. There wasn't even a red flower in their hair. There wasn't even a hint of happiness in their bodies. This made her even more unhappy. "Auntie Wu, who arranged for this sedan chair?" Gu Fangzi asked with a frown. Auntie Wu replied, replying to Miss Gu, "It was arranged by Mama Li." Young mistress gave her approval. "Oh." Gu Fangzi said coldly. What did old mistress and young master mean? They didn't say anything? Auntie Wu couldn't help but feel a little disdainful. She thought to herself, what more do you want to marry into the family as a concubine? It's not like you don't know that old mistress hates white matters the most. Old mistress gave full authority to young mistress and Mama Li to handle this matter. Old mistress didn't ask. Auntie Wu replied calmly. I knew that Auntie didn't know about this. It must be Sangwon, that be asterisk tch, who took the opportunity to ridicule me. You want to show me who's boss? You're not worthy. Gu Fengzi immediately had an idea. She refused to get into the sedan chair and ordered Auntie Wu. Carry this sedan chair back and let Auntie take a look. Ah. Auntie Wu and the servant girls who came to pick her up were stunned. Miss Gu, this. Why is this? Gu Fengzi coldly snorted. What kind of family is the Shi family? The richest family in Qingzhou. I'm also Auntie's niece. If I were to sit in such a shabby sedan chair and enter the Shi family today, wouldn't I be throwing the Shi family's face away? Not only would I throw the Shi family's face away, I'm afraid that outsiders would say that Auntie is harsh on me as a niece. Big sister is inexperienced and actually did such a careless thing, ruining the Shi family's reputation and Auntie's. Lan Xiang, you go with her and tell Auntie this. As Wang had already instructed, Gu Fengzi would still be addressed as Miss Gu after entering the Shi family, and would only change the way of addressing her after 3 years of marriage. Thus, Gu Fengzi still addressed Wang as before. This. Auntie Wu was suddenly put in a difficult position. She knew how powerful Mama Li was, and she also knew that Mama Li didn't like Miss Gu. Logically speaking, this sedan chair could have been better, but Mama Li's arrangement was in accordance with the rules, and no one would be able to find fault with it. Miss Gu bypassed Mama Li and purposely dragged the matter to young mistress. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell what her intentions were. Auntie Wu couldn't help but secretly grumble. How did I get involved in such muddy water? Young mistress was currently in the Shi family's favor. Not only did she coax old mistress into obedience, but young master also respected her very much. Miss Gu's words were not something that Auntie Wu wanted to hear, let alone relay them. Miss Gu, old slave, let's just forget about it. Why do you have to be so nosy? Anyway, our group won't be conspicuous. We'll just enter from the side gate and no one will know. Besides, you're still in mourning, isn't this? Shut up. Before Auntie Wu could finish, Gu Fengzi was already so angry that her eyebrows were raised and her face turned pale. Auntie Wu's words undoubtedly added fuel to the fire, poking at her sore spot and penetrating deep into her bones. Gu Fengzi didn't know how many times she had imagined the scene, and how lively it would be when she married into the Shi family. Even if there wasn't a red sedan chair, it would still be a joyous occasion with loud music. Never in her wildest dreams would she have thought that just a few people and a small sedan chair would be able to carry her in. Chapter 70. Not only was it inconspicuous, but it was also a side gate. These words ruthlessly stimulated Gu Fengzi's nerves, causing her to be so angry that she almost went crazy. How could she swallow this grievance? It's not up to you to talk in front of me. Seeing that today is a good day, I can't be bothered to argue with you. Go back to the household immediately and speak according to my words. What are you waiting for? Go. Gu Fengzi pointed at Auntie Wu and shouted with a frosty face. Auntie Wu was the daughter-in-law of the Shi family. Her husband was in charge of the Shi family's 3 farmsteads, and she had been working in the Shi family for many years. Even if Sangwon asked her questions, she would politely smile and call her sister-in-law Wu. She was angered by Gu Fengzi's outburst in front of everyone, and her face turned yellow. Her lips trembled, and she could not speak for a long time. Still in a daze? Why aren't you leaving? Gu Fengzi said again. Yes, old slave will go now. Auntie Wu did not dare to offend her master and gritted her teeth and swallowed her anger. Naturally, she cursed the villain in her heart. What kind of thing was this? She had not even entered the Shi family, and yet she was already so frivolous. She did not even deserve to be a master to carry the young mistress's shoes. Rushing to enter the family in the middle of the mourning period, she was just an item that no one wanted. Lan Xiang is Miss Gu's personal maidservant. It's better for her to stay and serve Miss Gu. Old slave and the 2 old sisters can report back together. Fifth auntie said with a smile. Gu Fengzi thought about it and agreed. If Lan Xiang went, she might as well let them report it themselves. Gu Fengzi's expression softened and she looked at Auntie Wu. When you go back and see old mistress, you don't need me to teach you what to say, do you? Auntie Wu quickly smiled. Old slave knows. It was old slave's idea. Old Slave felt that it was inappropriate to go back and ask for instructions. It was for the sake of the Sher family's face, and has nothing to do with Miss Gu. Gu Fengzi nodded with satisfaction. Then go and come back quickly. If you do it well, I will reward you handsomely. If you dare to play any tricks on me, just don't let me find out later. Auntie Wu was shocked. She quickly lowered her head and said, Old Slave doesn't dare, Old Slave doesn't dare. Auntie Wu initially wanted to complain, but after being scared by Gu Fengzi, she immediately retracted her thoughts. After all, there was a difference between master and servant. If Gu Fengzi wanted to find out, it would be easy for him to find an excuse to punish her. How could she avoid it? Auntie Wu didn't dare to stir up trouble in front of her master, but that didn't mean that she didn't dare to slack off. Auntie Wu had a belly full of anger that she needed to vent, so she brought her people into the city unhurriedly. On the way, she even generously took out money to treat everyone to tea and snacks. Everyone was happy to have something good to eat, and they could also steal some time to pass the time. Of course, they wouldn't complain. Everyone chatted and laughed in the tea house, and it was very lively. After spending about 2 hours, they finally leisurely returned to the Fu. After returning to the Fu, Auntie Wu went to see Wang and told her everything that Gu Fengzi had taught her. Of course, she didn't say that it was Gu Fengzi's idea. She only said that it was her own idea. When Wang heard this, she couldn't help but get angry. Meddlesome. Who told you to act on your own? I told you to go pick her up, but you left the young miss there and came back with an empty sedan chair. What is this? Auntie Wu felt wronged. She lightly slapped her mouth and smiled. Old Slave deserves to die. Old Slave deserves to die. But Old Slave did this for the sake of the Sher family's reputation, old mistress. Nonsense. Wang frowned. She thought for a moment and said, Was there a problem with the sedan chair? No. Auntie Wu hurriedly shook her head. Even though Gu Fengzi was supporting this matter, Auntie Wu didn't have the guts to criticize Mama Li for not doing a good job. That's right. It's just that Old Slave felt that it was too plain, so... Oh, so you just took the initiative to bring the empty sedan chair back? Mammy Li snorted and came in from the outside unhurriedly. After greeting Wang, she said to Auntie Wu, It's inauspicious that the sedan chair used to welcome the newlyweds is empty when they go out and come back. Younger sister Wu, you're not young anymore. Why are you so muddle-headed? Or have you really become muddle-headed? Old Slave. Auntie Wu's face turned yellow. She slapped her own mouth and said, The old slave was impulsive. Please forgive me, old mistress. The old slave will turn back now. Turn back now. Wait. Mama Li calmly said, Let's not talk about whether you're muddle-headed or not. I'm also old. Maybe I'm muddle-headed. It's better to bring the sedan chair in and let old mistress see it for herself. Let's see if I've done something wrong and tarnished the dignity of the Sher family. Oh, older sister, what are you saying? I don't have to worry about you handling things. How could there be anything wrong? It's not that I want to say this, but even if all the servants in this Fu don't care about the dignity of our Fu, you definitely won't. There's no need to see it. There's no need to see it. Wang quickly said with a smile as she ordered Auntie Wu to apologize. Auntie Wu was like a mouse caught in a bellows. She couldn't please either side. In her heart, she cursed Gu Fengzi to death. But at this time, what else could she do but obediently apologize and admit her mistake? How could Mama Li not know this? Auntie Wu wasn't a meddlesome person. Besides, she wasn't stupid. She wouldn't jump out to criticize her. Her return was definitely related to that little vixen, Gu Fengzi. Even so, she still refused to settle down and wanted to splash dirty water on her and young mistress. If she didn't teach her a lesson, she would really think that everyone else was a fool and let her play with them. Young mistress, it's better to bring the sedan chair in. The old slave must clearly confess this matter in front of young mistress today. Otherwise, people will think that the old slave is deliberately playing dirty tricks. The old slave didn't really agree with young mistress in the past, but the old slave still knows his priorities. He wouldn't dare to joke about the Sher family's reputation and young mistress's reputation. Mama Li's words were powerful and clear. One couldn't refute and could only agree. Auntie Wu heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly asked someone to bring the sedan chair in. Anyway, she had already said what needed to be said. The sedan chair had also been sent to old mistress. No matter what happened next, it had nothing to do with her. When the sedan chair was brought in, Mama Li said, "Young mistress, please take a look. This sedan chair was specially made by a craftsman. The materials used are all of the best quality. The cushions inside were also soft, and the curtains of the palanquin were sewn with the finest blue silk. If this isn't good, then what is?" She then sighed. "Young mistress is just past the 7th day of the mourning period. How can this sedan chair not be plain? Do you want it to be decorated with red decorations? That old Master Gu is watching from the sky. If it's really decorated with red decorations, then people will poke at us behind our backs and say that our Sure family doesn't know the rules." Wang heard Auntie Wu's words and felt that it was a little plain at first glance. Now that she heard Mama Li's words, she felt that she was right and nodded. "Old sister, you're right. That's the right way to go. Auntie Wu, you've indeed done something foolish. Yes, it's the old slave's fault. The old slave shouldn't have been so hot-headed. It's the old slave's fault." Auntie Wu repeatedly apologized and hurried to fetch Gu Fengzi back. However, Mama Li stopped her and smiled. "Younger sister Wu, it's true that you've been hot-headed today. I've lived for so long, but I've never seen a sedan chair used to fetch a new person into the household empty. Since this sedan chair has returned, it can't be used again. Otherwise, it'll be inauspicious. It's better to change to another sedan chair." Auntie Wu was secretly happy, but she spoke with difficulty. "Sister Li is right. But where can we find a new sedan chair in such a hurry? Young Mistress Gu is still waiting outside the city." "You're asking me? I can't make one appear for you." Mama Li sneered. Wang thought for a moment and frowned. "Forget it, just bring one over. Remember to change the curtains to a plain color and remove all the decorations. We can't let Fengzi keep waiting." As Wang spoke, she sighed and secretly thought to herself, "Could it be that I've been possessed? Why is everything going so wrong?" Auntie Wu quickly agreed and asked with a smile, "Then when the old slave has prepared the sedan chair, should I bring it over for old mistress to take a look?" "There's no need. Quickly go and fetch her." Wang became impatient and scolded with a frown. "You can't even handle such a small matter well. I think you don't need to do anything in the future." Auntie Wu was so frightened that she did not dare to utter a word and hurriedly left. Gu Fengzi waited in the backyard of the small inn where she was resting. When the sun gradually set, she finally saw Auntie Wu and her entourage who were late. "Why are you so slow? Young mistress is still waiting. Hurry up." Lan Xiang had long been waiting at the entrance for an unknown number of times. When she saw the sedan chair that they brought back, Lan Xiang's eyes widened. She pointed at the sedan chair and asked Auntie Wu, You brought back such a sedan chair in such a short time? It's even worse than the previous one." The previous sedan chair was at least new, but this one looked like it was put together at the last minute. The sedan chair pole, the sedan chair body, and the half-new curtains, no matter how one looked at it, it looked shabby. How did it look like a sedan chair used to welcome newcomers? It was not much better than the ones rented by ordinary families. Auntie Wu thought to herself, "Hey, your eyesight is quite good. It's even worse than the previous one. Otherwise, wouldn't this old lady have made a trip for nothing and suffered all that anger for nothing? When we go in and see young Mistress Gu, I have something to say." Towards Gu Fengzi's servant, Auntie Wu did not have such a good attitude. She snorted and said, "If you say that you can make the decision, then I'll go back and change it again." How would Lan Xiang dare to bear such responsibility? Moreover, the sun was already setting. She snorted unhappily and glared at Auntie Wu. She thought to herself, "You'll suffer when you see young mistress later." She turned around and pulled a long face as she said, "Come with me." When Gu Fengzi saw this, she flew into a rage. She pointed at Auntie Wu with a trembling finger and said after a while, "It's fine if you only came back after half a day, but you actually brought back such a plaything. What do you mean? Whose idea was this? Was it elder sister's idea? She's so ruthless. She's deliberately making things difficult for me, isn't she?" "Young Mistress Gu, don't be anxious. Listen to old slave slowly. Auntie Wu smiled and said. When we entered the city, we were blocked and had no choice but to take a detour. We only entered the residence after a while. When old slave returned home, he did not even have a sip of tea and rushed to see First Mistress Gu. As she spoke, Auntie Wu told Gu Fengzi everything that had happened and said, Young Mistress Gu, if you don't believe me, you can ask around when you enter the residence. At that time, all the maidens serving First Mistress were present. If young Mistress Gu is not satisfied, how about old slave go back and talk to First Mistress Gu? You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.